They look like
Yeah.
I have three different ones, so I had to choose them.
Nice. What's up, y'all? 12:30 as scheduled, kind of. Jerit Roser here with Chance Hester of Catholic High, as you see represented in his brand new orange headset, as well as the Louisiana Football Report. Just reacting kind of on the fly to the new LHSAA playoff brackets that were just released over the last hour and a half on the LHSAA live stream. We've got a great group of guests scheduled to join us. Hunter Bauer of Go Preps will be first in just a few minutes, and then we'll have coaches and athletes from all over the state. The schedule is in the YouTube link in the description of today's live stream show. So if you want to check out which players and which coaches are going to be joining us and in which order, they're all there in the correct order. At least one representative from each of the brackets, and just kind of bouncing around. And then we'll kind of wrap up talking about some of our maybe early predictions. Again, we're just seeing these brackets for the first time, so I'll dive more into that through the week on Louisiana versus all y'all. But we'll make sure to wrap it up with some more of our takeaways. But I mean, we were kind of watching as it came out and pointing to, okay, that's an interesting matchup. That's an interesting matchup. You know, that's a team that did a lot better this season, has a higher seed than what we've seen maybe in years past. What were your just first takeaways as they come out live and watching it unfold?
There's a lot of really good, intriguing matchups. Obviously with our current playoff structure, there's a lot of buys. So for some of those teams that excite you the most, you're going to have to wait to see them. But right away, there's some intriguing matchups in Division I non-select. Central and East St. John right off the bat just sticks out. I know we'll get into more of that later, but that one right away sticks out. I got to see Central firsthand this year against Catholic High and varsity. Incredible high school football game. Coach Babineaux and Coach Camp and that crew over there doing an incredible job in year one. And I think you're going to continue to see Central year by year get better and better, make that district really interesting with Zachary and Catholic. And so that one right away stuck out. East St. John played a really tough schedule. And so those are two teams that have seen some of the best opponents. East St. John's seen Destrehan. Central saw Catholic and Zachary. So both teams are tested, and that's going to be a really fun one to watch. So that right away, that one just shot out to me as one to watch this week.
Yeah, it's cool to see, obviously, any year some of the different area teams get matched up that we've heard so much about East St. John and the River Parishes. I was coaching New Orleans and Central, as you mentioned. I thought they'd be good under Seminole, but I didn't know that they'd be battling y'all and Zachary the way they did right off the bat. And so to see them now square off in kind of a cross metro area matchup, a couple of others we talked about that we saw right away, Ouachita Parish coming down to face Santa Ma right here. We're at walk-ons on Airline Highway in Ascension Parish, so not far from here. And then Terrebonne making the trip out to Westgate was one that jumped out. So I think we'll see this thing get more and more intriguing, certainly every week. But there are definitely a couple making me wonder where I'm going to be headed for the first Friday night for sure.
Yeah, and it really just lets you know where to put in the Google Maps, because there's so many that are that intriguing in week one. Like you said, Terrebonne and Westgate. You talk about just like two athletic powerhouses. Athletes all over the field, receiver, DB, incredibly talented at quarterback, both teams. Westgate obviously coming off a really, really good last couple of years. Captured a state championship a few years back. Terrebonne, under a former St. James assistant, is their head coach, so he knows what good football looks like. And Tyler Lewis, I think, is his name.
Yeah, T.Y.
So they're two teams that are incredibly well coached, tons of athletes. And so that's going to be a really fun one to watch also.
We'll go more specifically into each bracket. We've got Hunter ready to jump on here, but just top seeds in each so far. Division I, non-select Ruston, select Holy Cross. Division II, non-select North DeSoto, select St. Thomas More. Division III, non-select is an undefeated Jena team, and select is an undefeated St. Charles Catholic. And Division IV on the select side, Vermilion Catholic, a second straight undefeated regular season. And on the non-select side, Logansport. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and add Mr. Hunter Bauer to the stage. And I know it's an always hectic weekend for you, brother. So appreciate you taking the time. How's everything going this Sunday afternoon?
Well, for the first time in 2 or 3 days, it's kind of quiet around here. So people aren't texting or calling and griping me out and things like that. So it's quite nice. No, I'm just kidding. No, we're doing really good. Crazy week, but it was eventful. And guys, just kind of briefly going through the brackets and seeing, what they offer before I came on. The first thing that jumps out at me is just this playoff format in general and how great it is compared to what the format was before it was revamped last year. You're getting semifinal state championship quality matchups in the second and third rounds, and even some of the first round matchups that I'm kind of looking at, I go, could kind of go either way. So I think it's just a testament to what the LHSAA executive committee did last year as far as revamping these playoff formats, not just for football, but for every sport. But anyways, that's just my soapbox to start this thing off. How are y'all doing?
Good, man. It's always an exciting time of the year for sure to see it become official and try and figure out what highways around the state I'm going to be tearing up over the next few weeks.
Yeah, no doubt. It's like I said, it's an exciting time of the year, and I think I was looking out of the 8 brackets, all but 2 could possibly see a rematch of a state championship game last year. So that's kind of exciting if that happens. But there's always room for some new blood in some of these brackets to break through. One of them that really jumps out at me is Airline in the non-select D1. Just how potent their offense has been. Ben Taylor, their quarterback, really good, but not just him. They've got a lot of weapons on offense and really good up there in that District 1 5A up there in Shreveport. So, yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great to see all these matchups. Again, I was just kind of briefly going through some of this. One of the things that I was looking at is in that non-select Division 2, in that top half of the bracket, that West Feliciana, Opelousas, Abbeville, Lutcher kind of range right there. That is, I feel like that's a dangerous side of that bracket. Opelousas, even Abbeville. I mean, Abbeville is just so much improved this year. Again, they would have to go up against a tough Letcher squad. But then, you also have West Feliciana and Opelousas as well. And I mean, that just kind of stood out to me as again, going back to those first and second round games that maybe could go either way. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, Phyllis.
Yeah, and West Feliciana, a place that's close to my heart. I worked there the last 3 seasons before switching over to Catholic. My wife still works there. She's a teacher at the middle school. So I got lots of love for that program. Coach Devin Ducote and those guys.
We talked about last year how wide open that bracket could be.
It always is. I think that Division II non-select to me is kind of like the new 3A, where 3A was kind of always wide open. West Feliciana's had a couple bumps in the road this year, lost to a really good Central team early, and then kind of ran the table in a lot of, high stakes late games that were won late over McKinley and St. Michael, and needed a lot of things to fall their way. And then they fall a little short against Plaquemine at home on Friday night in a really tough defensive battle. But Joel Rogers for Westphal, their safety, quarterback, running back, receiver, kind of LSU commit, can kind of do everything, and it really depends. If he gets going, they can beat anybody in that bracket. But if a team's able to kind of minimize his damage, then you're relying on guys that we don't know as well, but are incredibly talented, like Elstrom Longs, the running back, Ted Jackson, the big defensive lineman, who's the reigning district MVP. A team that's really dangerous. I still don't think they've played their best ball, and that's kind of a good thing for Coach Ducote if he can take advantage of a win over a Minden squad in round 1 and then kind of reassess before he takes on a really tough Opelousas Reign winner matchup, because Opelousas, has about as much talent as anybody.
That's right. Yeah, and
a lot of what you were saying about Westphal, I think you could say very similarly about Opelousas with
absolutely
Sean Ford as the guy that once he gets going, good luck.
Yeah, no doubt. And, And in the bottom half of that bracket is, I think they have a favorable road if they can, get it going. But St. Martinville as a 26 seed is kind of dangerous. I know they have to go up against a really good Leesville squad who has Xavier Ford over probably close to almost 2,000 yards rushing now. I haven't gotten the updated stats, but that was one team that kind of stuck out to me as a lower seed that could cause some trouble in some of those divisions. And you talk about wide open brackets. I think that Division III non-select bracket is sort of wide open as well. You've got the usuals like St. James and Sterlington and Union Parish, but now you throw Jena into the mix and how great they've been behind their running back. Bogalusa, Amite. It really is, I think, an open bracket as far as who can get to the Superdome. Just looking at it, everybody thinks, well, Sterlington's got a good shot, and they do have a good shot. And I can't remember the amount of points they put up on a Wassman squad who was averaging 6 points per game coming into that district matchup Friday night. Just that's a testament to Coach Doty and what his team is doing at this point in the season. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I really do think some great football is going to be played heading into the Superdome this year. A lot of good student athletes are going to be seen, not just in South Louisiana, but in North Louisiana as teams travel and things like that. And that's what I love to see, is for the whole state to be able to see some of these student athletes that they don't really get to see because maybe they're in the New Orleans area and they don't really get to go to Shreveport and vice versa and things like that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I can't wait for it to start. Like I said, I think those first round matchups are going to be better than they have in years past. We saw that last year with the new invention of this format. So we'll see how it plays out.
You keep up with the power rankings all season long, and late in the season start doing the bracket prediction to kind of start getting people that much more excited for some of these potential matchups. Watching today, I mean, anything I looked at from your power rankings the last couple of days held absolutely true. First of all, good job as always. Were you surprised by any developments late in the season to see kind of a surge by a team or a team fall and lose some ground based on today compared to what you expected two weeks ago or so?
Yeah, so and I appreciate that, y'all. I always appreciate the support and everybody coming on the website during the season. Starting in week 8, I'll do some bracket projections. And what I had to try to explain to people is, projections are just that, they're projections. I can't predict the future. I try to guess at who may win and who may lose the next 2 weeks, but I can't predict the future, so I just do my best. But anyways, one of the biggest things that I saw was, going through and I'm like, that John Curtis Edna Carr matchup could switch up a lot of things, because at that time, and even myself, I'm like, there's no way Edna Carr gets beat. There's just no way. They're playing really well. Yeah, they had some close games, but Curtis lost twice. But since then, Curtis had kind of been on a roll, and it showed Friday night. And it really, I wouldn't say screwed that power ratings up for that division, but it really messed it up because Edna Carr was at 1. They dropped to 5. John Curtis was out of a first round bye coming into that week 10 game. And now they get a first round bye until week 2 of the playoffs. So I think that was one of the biggest developments as far as, who could shake up a bracket going into the start of the postseason. Really all the other divisions, one thing I was kind of shocked is how loaded the side of the non-select Division 4 bracket is. You got Oak Grove, Kentwood, Homer, and Mangum all on one side of that bracket, while Logansport and Haynesville, I think, are going to have free reign on that half of the bracket that they're in. Man, talk about some interesting quarterfinal and semifinal matchups. Whoever gets that far, because I think Mangum's playing really good at this point of the season too. And then Oak Grove, I think, in my opinion, is probably the favorite to win it again this year. They're just so strong, and what Coach Gregory has done for that program is just beyond wonders. But then you throw Kentwood and Homer in there, and they can score at will, and they have really good Kentwood has a really good defense and can play with anybody. So I was thinking maybe the Haynesville Homer matchup would kind of shake things up if Homer would have won. But kind of looking back at it now, Haynesville would have stayed right at that number 4 seed. Homer would have just changed their positioning a little bit. But yeah, no, the Division I select bracket, I think that's what shocked me the most was John Curtis going in and blanking Edna Carr, or not blanking Edna Carr, almost blanking Edna Carr, but defeating Edna Carr and able to jump up to that number 6 seed and get a first round bye. And then Holy Cross just slipping in at the number 1 seed, and Holy Cross is good in their own right. So anyways, yeah, that was probably one of the biggest developments.
Post game at Haas Memphis, Coach JT was telling his guys, all right, we got to do this 5 more times. And now he only has to do it 4 more times.
Yeah.
Because of the way some of that shook out, and then climbing a little bit farther than I guess he realized they were going to.
Well, and you know, looking at the bracket, we're going to possibly get a Karen Crow Acadiana rematch in the second round. How crazy is that? And nothing against Acadiana, but it's hard to beat the same team twice, especially a good Karen Crow team that went to battle with Archbishop Shaw this past Friday. And, you know, I know it would have to be at Acadiana's place, which doesn't really matter because they're in the same area. But talk about a really, really great environment for high school football playoffs, especially in the second round. So, yeah, just looking at that, I was like, man, that would be a huge game if Karen Crow should advance. And then, you know, Captain Shreve, I think they've kind of flown under the radar this year. They've got a lot of weapons. What Coach Kirby's done up there, really great guy. They could host the winner of Northwood Shreveport and Archbishop Rummel, and I think that game could be won either way. That's a long road trip for Rummel, but I think Shreve has the tools to be able to defeat Rummel. I know they've had a lot of injuries this year, so you know, maybe get a Northwest Louisiana matchup with Northwood and Captain Shreve in the second round. So it just going back to what I said before, I just love this format because it gives us so many different scenarios. I felt like the last 10 years, it was the same thing every single year, the same matchups, whether it was in the quarterfinal, semifinal, or the championship rounds. And I feel like with this format, you're getting way better matchups, different matchups, and you're going to see a lot of great football play between now and December 7th.
You know, I think that's my favorite thing about the whole new system is Division I select, because for years it was the Catholic League and Catholic High, and that was it. And it was going to state champion was going to come from one of those 2 places. But now you add in Acadiana, Karen Crow, Captain Shreve, like a lot of these North Louisiana. There was no North Louisiana presence at all in Division I select under the old system, and now there is. And like you said, Coach Kirby did an incredible job. You know, lost to a really, really good Calvary school early in the year, which there's no shame in that. Calvary beat everybody on their schedule, including a lot of good teams. And then they absolutely pummel Airline, even though they lost their starting quarterback in J.D. Savage to an injury. So they were kind of running a 2-quarterback system. One was more of a runner. J.D. Savage was more of a pocket passer. They lose Savage, and they don't really miss a beat. They've been able to run through the rest of their schedule. And so Captain Shreve, you know, is kind of a newer face that high in the playoffs. Like, you know, they're always in the conversation of making it. They're never at the end. They're usually a middle-of-the-road team, though. You know, my younger brother, JT, is a junior receiver for Captain Shreve. So, obviously, I got some love for the Gators, especially being from Shreveport. But them being a 2 seed is kind of an unusual thing for them, but they've earned it, you know, to go 9-1 with that schedule, only lost being the Calvary. And, you know, they're playing really good football at the right time. And like you said, the game they're waiting to see what happens could go either way. You know, Rummel had a very uncharacteristic season for their standards, but still won some really big games. Northwood was very solid again. You know, kind of lost the biggest game of the year for them, in their opinion. They're always circling that North DeSoto matchup. They've had North DeSoto's number and Coach Dunn's number the last 2 years. And then Coach Dunn's able to get it done this year. But Northwood is still very dangerous. And so Captain Shreve, regardless, I think Shreve has their hands full, even though I expect Shreve to stick around for a while in the playoffs and win a couple.
Hunter, we appreciate you. We're about to jump to our first coach, man. Have a good rest of the Sunday. I'm sure we'll be talking a ton throughout this next month and a half.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me on to ramble for a few minutes, and we'll see y'all down the road.
Appreciate you, man.
All right.
as mentioned, first coach, we wanted to – Coach, can you hear us all right? You hearing us? Coach Broc Prejean from Vermilion Catholic. We wanted to start with one of the top seeds and an undefeated team. The Eagles are exactly that in Division IV Select. Coach, how are we doing today? How does that sound? Undefeated number 1 seed going in.
I'm actually having trouble getting audio from you guys. I was able to hear Hunter pretty good, but on y'all end, I'm not really hearing anything.
Interesting. Why that?
I may try to jump out of this real quick and jump back
Sure.
in and see if maybe that fixes some of it.
Sure. So we might be back with Coach Prejean here in a second. Hopefully, we actually have our next guest who is a couple minutes early. Hopefully, he can hear us all right. Jay, can you hear us, my man?
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought. Yes, sir. So Louisiana Tech committed senior wide receiver Jay Simon from Calvary Baptist, another high seed there in the Division III bracket. And what, you guys ended up a number 2 seed in that bracket. Two seed, and so a first-round bye, potential second-round matchup with Menard or Houma Christian, and then Dunham is on y'all's portion of the bracket as number 7 seed. How are we feeling about where we are? I know y'all expected to be a high seed. How are we doing? How are we like number 2?
I mean, we're excited to be 1 or 2 seed to have every game at home in the playoffs. That's big. That's huge. We want that rematch with Dunham in quarters, and so we're glad they're on the same side of the bracket. And if they do their job and we do our job and we see them in quarters at home, that's what we want.
We've got a coach here who knows the Calvary Baptist program pretty well, going back to his years back up in Shreveport, Coach Chance Hester. They're playing pretty well, doing you guys proud from y'all's run back in the day.
Yeah, man. So Calvary alum, class of 2011. And then I was a coach there from 2013 to 2015. So I was there for those first 2 state championship years. Hey, man, like you can tell Jerit, we don't need to be the number 1 seed to go win it. The 2 years I was there, we were the 2 seed back-to-back years, went and won the whole thing. So, the season you guys have had has been incredible. I've been living and dying with every Friday night. My older brother, Coach Hester there, the soccer coach y'all have there at Calvary.
Yeah.
He keeps me updated every Friday night. You started off the season so hot, wins over Captain Shreve, who ends up being the 2 seed in 5A, wins over Bird, which is never easy. Wins over Westgate, who has been a powerhouse the last few years. And then you get a win over a Wassman team that doesn't allow points to anybody. So how do you feel like that early part of the tough schedule has gotten y'all ready for what's next in the playoffs?
Hey, you named those 4 teams, and you can't forget we beat Logansport, who's the 1 seed in their bracket too. And playing those first 5 weeks, playing those 5 games, and then every week knowing it's going to be a battle and playing through injuries and hurt and still find a way to win, that showed us that when it comes to playoffs and we have to play the ULabs, the Newmans, the Dunhams, St. Charles, that where we could beat anybody, we could hang at anybody, and we could win some football games, and that we could go in the dome and we could make some noise. So that's what it showed us, and it gave us a lot of confidence as a team.
You guys play with a ton of confidence, a ton of swag. You're not shy about it. How do you balance that this time of year, making sure you're playing that way, but not playing loose, but not too loose sort of thing, not being overconfident, not taking anything for granted, knowing that you can beat anyone on any given Friday night, not assuming that, especially probably more so for some of the younger guys that are filling in key roles around y'all's senior class?
I would give it to, honestly, Coach Gewen. He reminds us that, we're 10-0, but there's been times in the past where he's had really good football teams and they get to playoffs and they fold because they're not playing as a team and they start getting big-headed because what they did in the regular season one. To be honest, it's cool and all, but that's not the goal. That's not really what matters. So I give it to the coaching staff. And this year, the seniors, we've been here the last 2 years where, we've had pretty good seasons, but we come playoffs and it's that one thing holding us back. And we're going to get over that hump this year.
Yeah. So when I was young, I grew up at Evangel watching Mark Miller. tear people up at linebacker. And then he was my defensive coordinator my freshman year playing in high school at Calvary.
Yes, sir.
What kind of energy does Coach Miller bring on Friday nights? Because, like, he's always been an incredibly energetic guy. Like, he obviously knows his stuff on defense, but, like, a lot of coaches know their stuff. But his ability to connect to young people, and obviously he's got 2 sons on the team that are both playing really well for y'all. So what kind of energy does old Killer Miller bring to the Cavaliers on Friday nights?
His energy on Friday nights or powder puff during the week or whatever it is, he's all over the place.
Yeah, Coach Miller, he brings it. That's my guy. We've had some talks, out off the field. I come to the classroom, stop by sometimes. He has snacks. I mean, he's off the field, on the field. He always has energy, and he just wants us to be great. I mean, just in life. I mean, you could see it through his sons that he really loves them and all his kids, and that he wants them to win on and off the field in life. But Coach Miller, he brings it in practice. He reminded us, like, we're working hard, even from scout team to scrimmage to 7-on-7 to inside, and whatever we're doing on the field, he wants it 100, and he's ready to kill, like you say, Killer Miller.
Jay, appreciate you, sir. Go enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Hopefully see you here soon in one of these big Division III matchups.
Yes, sir. Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, bro. We're going to go back to Coach Prejean from Vermilion Catholic. Coach, can you hear us a little bit better this time?
Yeah, we're all good, man.
Beautiful. As I was saying before, man, one of the 8 remaining undefeated teams around the state heading into the Division IV select bracket as the number 1 seed. You guys were an undefeated regular season team a year ago. What goes into having your guys be ready to play at that high of a level with that level of consistency to be in that sort of position? 20-0 the last couple regular seasons, a dome team a year ago, and a number 1 seed here kicking off the playoff bracket.
Yeah, I think if you talk to any coach in the state, they'll tell you you're never really ready week 1. You don't know what you're going to get. August is obviously a stressful time, but this group had a lot of question marks coming in with a lot of positions to fill, and they were able to embrace some coaching and understand their roles and really got it going early on in the season, and it's carried through. We've been very fortunate and blessed with a healthy roster for the most part throughout the season, and some tremendous coaches. So it's a heck of an achievement.
This isn't Vermilion Catholic's 10-0 is not a 10-0 that came easy. You start off week 1 with a massive win over Catholic New Iberia, who ends up going 8-2. And then you turn around, you beat Lorville, who's 7-3. And then you play a Jeanerette squad who had an incredible season, and you get all over them early and hang on for a 42-8 victory. And then the same thing with Central Catholic. So, like, how do you think that those kind of matchups, I mean, 4 of your 10 wins are against teams that won 8 games. So, like, how does that get you ready to face off against these playoff matchups in select Division IV, which is always so loaded with a lot of really good programs?
Yeah, the benefit I think this year's team has had is that we found ways to win. In those first 4 games, I believe we were trailing in all of those games at some point. The 2 or 3 of them we were trailing at half. So the guys' resolve was tested a lot. And then down the stretch, as you mentioned, going up against a Jeanerette, Central Catholic, and a Hanson this final week, really tested our mettle again, and really, really proud with how the kids responded to that. But obviously the playoffs are going to be tough. Everybody's going to highlight the OCSs and the Southern Labs, but Central Catholic can beat anybody they play. Ascension Catholic, Opelousas Catholic, Riverside, St. Martin's. There's some really quality teams out there. That's going to make it an extraordinary feat to try and get back to New Orleans.
You mentioned some of the other teams around the bracket, and I think a lot of the perception is that the top tier, I guess, of title contenders would be you guys, OCS and Southern Lab, those other 2 schools that you mentioned, who both end up on the opposite side of the bracket. How much did you watch, if at all, the way that the power rankings or bracket kind of shook out, and having them both on the opposite side, do you view that as significant to the way some of the pairings fall, or at the end of the day, with some of those other teams you mentioned, not so much as big of a deal to you guys as it may have seemed to me or some others?
Yeah, you control what you can control. Our goal was to be 10-0. We're 10-0. That's what we could do on our side of things. And then, a it's math that takes care of the rest. Obviously, we can't do anything about that, and you do keep an eye on some of those teams. There's no doubt. I think everybody understands that to hold that trophy in Division IV Select, you're going to have to go up against Coach Fitzhugh and OCS at some point, and that's no easy feat. But it's not to say that we're focusing on anything on that other side of the bracket, because we definitely have our hands full on our side right now.
So, Coach, I know right now you're getting ready to play the bye week. You're getting ready to kind of focus on yourselves and kind of maybe get back to some of those August type practices where it's a little bit more good on good and you're not really looking at scout. And a chance to maybe get a little healthier than you were coming out of Friday night. But what do you know, if anything, so far about Slaughter Charter and Delhi Charter? Have you had a chance to kind of peek at those teams yet? I know the brackets just came out, but what do you know, if anything, about that potential matchup of next week?
Yeah, from what I've seen and what I've looked into, I think that's going to be a really good game next Friday between 16 and 17. Slaughter's got a kind of a unique offense. Defensively, looks like they're a 4-2-5 cover one kind of approach. On the other side of it, you have a split back veer, which we haven't seen in a while, to be honest with you. So we're going to obviously pay attention throughout the week, try to gather some information as we can, and figure out next Saturday morning who the opponent's going to be. But we're absolutely looking forward to a bye week. I think it's a chance for our kids to breathe a little bit, appreciate what they've been through over the past 3-4 months, and kind of reevaluate where we need to get better and do a little self-scouting.
You going to make the trip to beautiful Slaughter, Louisiana on Friday night and check that one out in person, or are you just going to wait for the film to come in?
We'll see. We'll play that one by ear. Obviously I have to make sure there's nothing else going on, but no, if I can, I'd love to be in attendance. Me and a couple of the coaches may make that trip.
Coach, appreciate you. Enjoy the bye week. Make the most of the bye week, and good luck with that first playoff game in 12 days from now.
I appreciate you guys. A really cool thing y'all are doing here today.
Appreciate you, Coach. Again, that was Coach Broc Prejean from the top-seeded and undefeated Vermilion Catholic Eagles in Division IV Select. And we go right to another undefeated and top-seeded coach, Coach Roark, the Jena Giants, over on the non-select side in Division II. And, Coach, how does all of that sound? I think this is y'all's first undefeated regular season since 17, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir.
What is the significance of that? What went into that? Obviously, you guys have bigger goals, but to be 10-0 through 10 games has to feel pretty good.
Yeah, well, our kids worked really hard all year, and they always do. But this group of kids is very mature. They work very hard, and some great leadership out of our senior guys, and got some really good football players. So, and staying healthy has a lot to do with that as well. It's a long football season. We've been pretty lucky on that front, so hopefully we can continue that.
And to correct myself, I think I said Division II, but you guys are Division III non-select.
Yes, that's right, Division III.
Coach, I'm a coach myself here in the state, and so I'm a little biased towards my guys. But I think that other than them, I think the Jena Giants might be my favorite team in the state this year that I've gotten to just watch and follow you throughout the season. The fact that your guys not only went 10-0, but whenever you faced the toughest matchups you faced all year, your guys just really rose to the challenge and really made some impressive statements. I mean, beating Tioga, who ends up being a top 10 seed in Division I Select, and your defense really just shutting them down for 4 quarters. And then you have the really big one later in the season recently where you went up against, Bunkie, who also had another fantastic season in a big district matchup, and to win that by 2 scores, in a really, tough physical district game. So really, like, what have you seen from your guys that whenever the lights are the brightest, that they've really just answered the call, more than just being 10-0, but really just like in the biggest moments, like what have your guys done so well to really just come out on top?
Just super determined, very, very locked in and believe that we can be really good. They know that they deserve as much as we can get because they work so dang hard. And when you're that invested year round, you go and work all the way through the summer. When you get to those tough games, it makes you want to fight harder for it. And I think that has a lot to do with it. And it makes me happy. It makes me feel very confident about our chances in the playoffs because of that grit and determination they've shown in some tough games already this season.
How huge has your senior class been in terms of leading the way from a player standpoint to be to this point and to also go into the playoffs knowing, okay, that 10-0 is great, but doesn't help us in any of these games that are ahead, just kind of having the right mindset and work ethic and all those things, because I know you've got a great group.
Well, they are a great group, and kind of a letdown season last year. We thought we were going to do better in the playoffs, so they were even more hungry, and they've really matured a lot over the past year and a half or so, and grown into some really fine leaders and really fine young men, and they were a part of a quarterfinal team for us their freshman year. And some of those guys even played in that game a little bit. So they've had the experience, and they've had the experience of getting to the quarterfinal week and losing in overtime. And so very determined to get over that hump.
So, Coach, looking at the bracket, and I know this week you're like you said, you're focused on yourself. You know, you got a bye week. You want to, maybe get a little healthy and go back to some fundamental stuff. But two pretty solid programs from Northeast Louisiana are playing Friday night with a chance to come to Jena. Caldwell Paris and Richwood. Richwood's no stranger to playoff success. They're the 16 and 17 respectively. So have you gotten a chance to really look at those opponents yet and kind of see what they do? Or have you really just been focused on your guys so far?
Well, we hadn't looked at them yet, but as far as for the playoffs, but we played Caldwell in district. I haven't seen Richwood on film at all. I think I kind of know what they do just from talking to other coaches. But this week for us is about anybody's kind of banged up a little bit, getting healthy, working on fundamentals, and making sure we stay in good shape. I'm not really crazy about having a Friday off, so we're still going to work pretty hard and pretty fast. Friday night's probably the best conditioning you get all week, and because you're going 1,000 miles an hour every snap, and so we got to make sure we stay on top of that and try to come out of the week healthy.
Coach, appreciate your time this Sunday afternoon, and good luck with that both this week and then kicking off the playoffs in week 2.
Thank you for having me.
You got it, Coach. Appreciate you. Again, that's Jerit Roser from Jena High, the top seed and undefeated Giants team in that Division III non-select. And we'll kind of take a nice little jump up to the Division I select and have our second player of the show join us, Russell Babineaux from Acadiana, 2025 standout.
Yes, sir.
They get to enjoy the final bye in that Division I select bracket, and then are awaiting what I think a lot of people anticipate is a rematch with a well-known Caring Pro team, and would probably be, if it holds that way, one of the most anticipated matchups of that week. Russell, how we doing this Sunday afternoon?
Really well, man. Just spending time with the family and just watching the playoff brackets and everything. It's interesting to see who we come up against and stuff like that. And the Caring Pro game, I feel like it's always going to be a good game. And playing them after the bye week, that's going to be a really good game.
Tell the folks I said hello, by the way, but
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, Russell. So, you guys, as you get ready for the playoffs, you're fortunate to have a bye week, which is always, some coaches hate it because they want to keep momentum going. But a lot of times the players love it because it gives them a chance to kind of get healthy, rest up a little bit. You've already played Lafayette Christian, John Curtis, and Caring.
Yes,
you may not play anybody in the playoffs tougher than who you've already played.
Exactly.
So those types of matchups throughout the season, Caring Crow being a district game and then stepping out and playing LCA and Curtis non-district. So what do those kind of matchups do for y'all as you get ready for the playoffs? Like, how do those help prepare y'all for what's to come in November, December?
Yeah, so playing those teams, it's always a battle and it's always a dogfight when you enter a team like that. But, just being able to play them to see where we are, in the season and just, overall just getting better as we go and seeing where we're at, we can focus on, the points that we really need to focus on and get ready for playoffs, because those caliber teams, you might not see them, every season, but when you do, it gets you right for the playoffs and it gets you prepared. So now we know what to look forward to.
When we were texting earlier this morning and I was telling you about some of the dynamics, some of the things we talk about, did you already know that the matchup was potentially going to be in Acadiana Karen Crow, the fourth matchup between you guys in the last 2 years alone? Yeah. And how do you feel about that? Because it's tough to beat a team twice. Y'all saw that last year. What are you thinking as it falls that way?
So we got like rumors that we might be playing John Curtis after the bye week, but when the brackets fell, we seen that we were playing Karen Crow again, and we were prepared, like we knew it was probably gonna go that way, but just like last year and everything, we played them in the regular season, and then we played them first round of playoffs, and we beat them the first time they beat us. So it was like it's hard to beat a team twice, as you said, and watching that, it felt like that this year. We were ready for it, and now we have to go out and compete again and just get everything we needed in that first game and bringing it out this game.
Russell, when people think about high school football in Louisiana, Acadiana is one of the first teams that always pops in mind. There's so much tradition and history, and so what does this particular Acadiana team, 2023, just focusing on right now, what do y'all have to do in the playoffs to be considered one of those really good Acadiana teams when people look back on the 2023 Rams?
So just like overall, just coming together as a team and just making a statement. I feel like in the past years, they were like, we've been to the Dome a couple times, but we really want to make that statement and go back to the Dome this year. That's always our goal for the whole season, like winning a district championship and overall winning a state championship. So we're looking forward to that, and we really want to just put our name back out there and then showing people who we are. So it's really the main goal.
You're going to be the youngest person on this show, by the way. But you also, among the players, you might have still been the first of the player group that was highlighted on Louisiana versus all y'all, as some of your recruitment took off early. How much have you developed as a young leader on this team since whenever we were first talking with you as a freshman? You're a guy that this year had to step in when Caden was banged up and play some quarterback. You had the game-sealing interception a couple weeks ago in that Karen Crow game. Just your role, the way it's developed, not only an on-field guy, but as a leader in that locker room, kind of where are you now as an upperclassman?
So it's almost like just being mature like on a team and just being a leader for your team. Playing like anywhere the team needs you and just getting the job done. Like the spotlight isn't too big, so anytime, like if I have to go play defense, if I have to go play quarterback, I'm ready to play, and just being there when I have to. So just showing up every day and just being a leader for the team. I feel like it's pretty much always been there since freshman year. Just being with the older guys, seeing how they work, seeing how they play and stuff like that. It really just like carried on, and I just want to work hard every day and just do whatever the team needs me to do to win.
Where are you this Friday night as a player? Are you over at Karen Crow watching that game to see who you're going to play next? Yeah, no question.
So we were pretty much tuning into all the games, like the LCA game and STM and stuff like that. But the Karen Crow game, we're prepared for them this bye week. We're going to watch a lot of film, see what we need to do from last game, see what we need to do better and stuff like that. So we're overall prepared for them.
All right, Russell. So, hey, good luck, man. Acadiana is one of those teams that it doesn't matter what seed you end up as. The Rams are always going to be dangerous. Y'all run an offense that I can speak from experience. Teams hate preparing to play against. But it's incredibly effective. You grow up running it similar to like a John Curtis or a Haynesville, where you grow up running that offense. So that's why you're so good at it. But man, good luck to you. It should be a fun one, and next Friday should be a lot of fun.
No doubt. Thank you for having me. Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, brother. See you soon.
Yes, sir. No doubt.
Probably see them in 2 weeks in that second playoff game. We'll jump straight from Russ up to the northwest area of the state for a North DeSoto coach, Dennis Dunn, a guy who probably remembers Chance running around as a youngster early on in his days up there. Coach, how are we doing this Sunday afternoon?
Doing great. Sorry about the shaky video, but I'm traveling home from church, so I'm on the road. And yes, I remember Chance Hester as a boy running around watching his big brothers play for the E back in the day.
Coach Dunn, you know I love you to death, so I'm privileged to get to talk to you today. You were a big part of me and my brothers, all of our upbringing, and are an important figure to us. So I'm always a big North DeSoto Griffins fan, as much as that pains me sometimes being from up there. But I got no choice but to root for the Griffins because of the love I have for you. So, you know, just take us through just what your team was able to do to stack another great season back to back. In a really tough schedule. You know, District 1-4A is full of really good programs. Obviously, getting to play against Evangel, who you have so much history with, and starting off against a program like Airline that had such a good season. So what did your boys do so well that was able to just stack another really good regular season on top of the one you had in 2022?
Well, Chance, first of all, thanks for the love, and feeling is mutual. I love the entire Hester family, and relationships are bigger than the game. So those relationships that we have for life, that span a lifetime, is what it's all about. So again, thanks for that love, and feeling is mutual. Starting the year off with a loss, was something I think that probably worked for us. We had to face some adversity that normally you face in a season, but we faced it after week 1 and was able to address adversity, knowing that you're going to face adversity at some point in the season. It just happened really quick for us. We led that first half. We leave halftime up 28-14 at half, had full control of the game, and our best player was ejected on defense. Our best defensive player, linebacker, BT McMillan, was ejected for a leading with a head penalty, and kind of sent our defense into disarray a little bit. So we just kind of unraveled in the third quarter. Uncharacteristically, did not protect the football offensively very well, and they had a big third quarter, and we unraveled, but almost fought back and won it in the fourth quarter. Our guys responded to the adversity in an amazing way. We had 2 touchdowns called back, and we come back and win that football game. So I think our kids realized that, albeit Airline is a very good football team, it was a game we should have won. It felt like we beat ourselves in that game. And then week 2, I thought was the key game of the year in playing a really, really talented center Texas football team, having 2 of the best athletes we've played against all year from anyone, in their quarterback and running back, 2 amazing athletes that we had difficulty tackling. And they had points in the game, led by 2 scores. And then for our guys to fight and come back and win a very tough ball game in week 2, I thought was the defining game of the season. I said at the time that I think this is a season-making kind of win, and it was. Having to face some adversity again through the year in some games like Evangel, we turned the ball over 4 times against them, but still was able to persevere, and our kids just played with extreme passion and will to win a very good game against a very talented Evangel team, and then to come back the next week and beat a really talented Huntington team that I feel like has a chance to win a game or 2 in the playoffs. They're really good up front. Stephen Dennis has done an outstanding job there at Huntington. So both of those wins, I thought, were marquee wins that got us, prepared to play in a playoff kind of environment last week against Northwood. And we got that 7-game monkey off our back in, resounding fashion, beating a really much improved Northwood team that, was a playoff kind of team, was a playoff environment. But our guys, Chance, started in January, with a mission of wanting to go back and finish what we started. And, here we are. And now what a lot of people say is the real season begins. And we know it's a week-to-week challenge. Very good bracket, very good teams, but a lot of unfinished business for these Griffins.
Coach, last year you guys were a high seed, a 4 seed, but it was kind of a breakout type of year where for folks that weren't watching what you were doing during the course of the year, I think you caught some people by surprise just because the program hadn't made that sort of a deep run. This year, I don't think anyone's surprised. They saw what you did last year. They saw this regular season. They watched it a little bit more closely, and now you go in as a top seed after having gone through some of those battles you were just mentioning. How does that, if at all, kind of change the way you maybe things you talk about to your kids to get them ready for this and know some of those different dynamics in terms of external perception, again, if at all?
Well, I think you're right. Last year we were the hunters. We didn't really have the target on our backs last year. We were trying to establish ourselves. We knew that we had some opportunities to be successful because we had some rising stars that nobody really ever heard of. And a kid by the name of Luke Delafield and Cole Corey, guys that we knew were potentially going to be very, very gifted players and have an opportunity to have a lot of success on the field, but nobody had ever heard of it. So we won, beat Airline in a big way in that week 1, and then went on a 9-game run there and got some people's attention, but again lost a very close game, the last game at Northwood, and made that good playoff run. So going into the year, we knew the target would now be on our back. People knowing that we had that kind of success, and for our guys to respond the way they've done, knowing that we would be circled on everybody's schedule as the team to beat, and for us to be able to meet every one of those challenges and pass the test has been big. But again, we won't go into the playoffs being a surprise to anyone. Everybody will know that they play DeSoto. It's going to be a heck of a battle. And we're excited about the challenge and know that there's some really good teams that you don't get to see week in and week out during the year. I love the setup and love the opportunity that's ahead of us.
Coach, we're going to stay in your area of the state next and go to Coach Scogin from Airline. Do you have any message for he and the Vikings as they start their Division I playoffs here shortly?
No, we're just happy for them. We have a really good relationship with Airline, the principal of Airline, and our defensive coordinator. Our defensive coordinator's dad is the principal of Airline, Josh James. And Justin, what a job Justin Scogin has done there. We knew Airline was a sleeping giant, but he's gone in there, awakened to that giant. And we're just glad they won 9 games after that loss, because that has helped us with the power ratings, their record during the year. So just so happy for them, and hope they can make a run.
Good deal. I think he heard that, but we'll certainly pass the message along. Coach, appreciate you taking some time on a Sunday to chat with us.
Thank you for having me. Yes, sir. Chance, good to see you, man. Love you, bud.
Love you, Coach.
Again, Coach Dennis Dunn from North DeSoto now, very well known, not just in Shreveport, but around the state, and had some kind words for Coach Scogin over at Airline. The Vikings, a 4 seed in that Division I non-select group, and part of that tough Shreveport area where everybody kind of got each other once during the course of the year as you guys prepared for this point. Coach, could you hear Coach Dunn, I guess, first of all, and thank you for taking some time to join us today.
Oh, no problem, man. Thank y'all. Yeah, I did, man. He's he's become a friend over the years, the past couple of years, and man, what a job he's done at North DeSoto. And of course, anytime you get praise from a guy like him, it's it's a very humbling deal.
you guys, as a program, you take over, and now in a 2-year span, you go from Airline missing the playoffs a couple years back to now being one of the highest seeds in the entire bracket. Talk me through that process. What's gone so well to this point, and your confidence level, and kind of where the kids are in their buy-in and their confidence and execution as we now get to that next phase of this season.
It's extremely interesting, man. When I took the job, I was living in an apartment up there because I was able to start immediately, and this was my first job, my first head job. So I was, kind of determined to do whatever I had to do to make things work and be there every day. And at one point, I was driving from Leesville to Shreveport to Bossier every single day, back and forth, just so I could be there for athletic PE. And it kind of evolved from there. To taking over last year. And when I first got there, I felt like there was some, there was the possibility of us being pretty good. And we started out 0-3. We lost North DeSoto, Union, and Northwood, and we were able to get things going a little bit in week 4. And, by the end of the year, we had, about 3/4 of the way through, I kind of felt like we finally had, that air about us that, we expected to win when we played. And, we kind of carried that into the summer, and we used it, most importantly through the off season. And, when we were able to come back with a great second half and beat North DeSoto, I think the kids just kind of reaffirmed to the kids, like, hey, look, we're here to stay, and this is our territory. And, we just continued, we had one slip up, but we continued to roll throughout the year. And, that was kind of the anatomy of the whole thing.
Coach Scogin, Airline has had some really, really nice years in the last few. I played for Coach Bo Meeks at Calvary when I was in high school, and he was the head coach at Airline before you, and had some really nice years before you got there. And so Airline's always played that really tough gauntlet of District 1-5A, where it seems like it could be anybody, any year between Shreve, Bird, you guys, Parkway. Like, it doesn't matter. Every year's really, really tough. And so, like you mentioned, you had that one slip up against Captain Shreve, who ends up being the 2 seed in Division I Select. And then your guys were able to refocus and win 4 in a row in the district, which, like I said, is a tough district to end the season. What was the biggest kind of thing behind getting your guys to refocus after that slip up to be able to finish the season so strong against some really quality opponents like Houghton, Bird, Parkway? Like, that's a really tough trio of games in a row. So what was the biggest thing behind you and your coaches kind of getting the guys to refocus after the one loss?
Yeah, and I've said this many a times. I mean, the program wasn't broken when I took it over. It was just kind of, there was a slight fracture, where he had been, dealing with health issues for a long time. And, the staff that they had was great that I inherited. And, it's just hard when the head coach is not around as much, as kind of the leader in the face of the program. So, I took over a great situation. As far as rebounding off the Captain Shreve deal, we were in that game all the way through till, basically towards the end of the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter. And, for lack of a better term or whatever, we just kind of blew it late in the third quarter in the fourth. And I think the kids understood, if we execute, we're still in that game deep into the fourth quarter. And that was kind of the message we gave them. Hey, look, this is what we kind of pride ourselves. We're not anything special. We just have a whole bunch of kids that play extremely hard. And we have some talented kids, but we don't show up, and we're not 6'7", 315 across the board. And we don't have any 4.3s. We don't have any, these guys that are just, rated through the roof, although they should be. We just have a bunch of ordinary guys that go out there and play extremely hard. So the message in the end was, hey, look, we pride ourselves on executing things perfectly. If you see us play, we run a lot of trick plays, and we do a whole lot of stuff to kind of fool people. And that night, we had a punt blocked. We botched 2 trick plays, and they just kind of came at inopportune times. And, I think the kids were hungry the next week to get back on the field against Houghton. And, ever since then, we've kind of regained our confidence, and we knew that we squandered some opportunities that night. And, that's kind of the message to the kids going forward.
Coach, we appreciate you taking some time on a Sunday, and certainly enjoy and make the most of this bye week. And then good luck in that second round of the playoffs against either Southside or Thibodaux.
Hey, thanks so much, man. I appreciate y'all having me.
You got it. Again, Coach Scogin up at Airline, the 4 seed in that Division I non-select bracket, and we talked with him about it. They went through some battles this year and finished with a great record and a high seed. Jumping down to the Division 4 non-select, Traville Frederick, a Tulane committed tight end for Jeanerette, who I talked to shortly before the season about just some big expectations there for his squad. And you guys are a 5 seed in the bracket. Again,
sir.
You guys, similar to what Coach Scogin at Airline and Company did, you had a rough year as a program just a couple years ago. So to build to a point where you guys are now a really high seed, have an opportunity to host a playoff game and get that community excited to come out for some November football, how exciting is that to kick off this postseason in that position?
It's super exciting to kick off the postseason in a high position like that. Knowing we hosted a playoff game last year, we should have all the jitterbugs out right now. It's all about business going into the playoffs. We got to treat every game like the state championship. Don't underestimate nobody, regardless of the record, regardless of the history. We just got to go in and play our hearts out.
Traville, I can speak from experience, and you can back me up on this. I don't know how familiar Jerit is with it, but I've actually coached a game at Jeanerette before as a visiting team. And I know that's a really tough place to go get a win on Friday night as a visiting team.
Oh, yeah.
So just speak through like how the community kind of rallies behind you guys and what it means to you to be getting to not only be a high seed, but getting to host that first round game against West St. John at home. They got to come to you. They got to deal with the whole community of Jeanerette at once, which is like a really tough place to play. So tell me what it means just for you to be knowing that I don't got to get on a bus and drive 3-4 hours for that first playoff game. I got to just walk out the locker room and then we're ready to go in front of our people.
It's just the feeling like you at home, you comfortable where you at. You know what you got to do. Is no jitterbug, no nervousness. You know the community behind you. Is really nothing else to feel but just feel the game. That's it. Feel the presence of the people around you and what you have to do.
When we talked leading up to the season, you mentioned that you thought this team was capable of beating anyone on your schedule or in your division. You guys had a couple of games drop this year. How did y'all grow, learn, develop from those, navigate those, stay focused to make sure that you didn't let a slip up here on a Friday night in September or whatever it was derail anything because of where the expectations were?
Right. So with us, it's basically win or loss. If the game's close, we made mistakes. If we lose the game, we made mistakes. Even if we win by a lot, we look at the mistakes we make, and we want to be flawless going into the next game. We try our hardest to be flawless every week.
Good deal.
So Traville, tell me, so what does Jeanerette have to do well on Friday night to wake up Saturday knowing that you're getting ready for the next one?
Play. We have to come out with that mindset. We have to come out with that mindset. We're about to dog you out. Like it's not gonna be a dog fight. We're gonna put you in the ground. We're gonna keep it up.
There you go. Traville, appreciate you as always, man, and good luck getting these playoffs started.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You got it, man. Again, it's Traville Frederick Jr., a standout at Jeanerette, Division 4, number 5 seed on the non-select side. When he finishes up at Jeanerette, he's headed to New Orleans for his college ball at Tulane. We might as well go straight to New Orleans with the number 1 seed in the select bracket. Coach Scott Wattigny back at his alma mater of Holy Cross, the top-seeded Tigers, enjoying a bye this week before kicking off the playoffs week 2. Coach, appreciate you joining us on this Sunday. How are we? How does the top-seeded Holy Cross Tigers sound?
Yeah, it sounds good, man. Thanks for having me. This season obviously has culminated into, one that's definitely to be remembered in our community. Super proud of our coaches and players. And, at this point, though, everybody starts back 0-0. So we've closed one chapter to reopen another chapter, and looking forward to the opportunity.
Coach, you and I have texted just about almost every week throughout the season about
good to see you, man.
about you too, brother, about how this special season. I myself have gotten to coach at my alma mater before. That's where I started my coaching career. And it's an incredibly special thing to walk out on, in those same colors that you wore as a player and get to experience it from the coaching side and just the pride you feel. So you've had some really good seasons. Obviously, you've taken Hannon to the Dome, Catholic of New Iberia to the Dome, and you've had some incredible experiences. But it's got to be different being 8-2, the number 1 seed for your alma mater. So tell me, compared to your other experiences with deep playoff runs, what is this season? How's this different because you're back at home?
Yeah, I think anywhere you go, you try to, morph yourself into being a part of that community, whether as an assistant or as a head coach. I've tried to do that in the previous places where I've been at. And I think I've done a good job of, trying to assimilate into their culture and to what their school tries to do. It's just real easy here at home. It's just, the legacy and the tradition that comes with my family, the 10 members of my family that went to Holy Cross, and then plus my 8 years I spent there. And it's even more special now. I got 2 little boys on campus. So it's special and it's easy, it's, and that doesn't discredit the other places that, you had to try to find and muster up the ability to assimilate into their culture. But it just, it's like just being back at home, man. It's getting back on a bike when you haven't got on it for a while, and it's all of a sudden you just find yourself in a groove. So it's been real special, man. It's been a blessing, and and definitely God-filled position for me to be in.
You guys are the top seed in that select bracket that is made up of a huge contingent from your district, the Catholic League, where we saw, as well as any league, the ability for any one of these teams to beat each other on any given Friday night. Yeah. How much fun does that make this playoff bracket, or anxiety inducing? How easy does that make the messaging to the kids to realize, yeah, we're the number 1 seed, but we should know as well as anyone you can lose to any of these teams on a Friday night?
Yeah, man. I think playing in this league prepares you so much for the playoffs, man. It's just, every week's a playoff game. You go into, a second half comeback victory against St. Aug, man. You're 6-0 and you're playing the next big one, which is against Brother Martin, and you find yourself 6-1, and then you go to the next week and you find yourself 6-2. And then obviously we won the last 2, but it's a gauntlet, man. That's the reason why people like coaching in the Catholic League. That's the reason why players like coming to schools like Holy Cross and Jesuit and Rummel and the rest of the teams that are in it. Because each week there is no bye week. There is no, hey, we can just kind of, loosen up a little bit and get an easy victory. You could throw out every record for every week because you're going to get everybody's best, coaching wise and player wise. So I think that prepares you for opportunities like this. We're the 1 seed, and as I'm telling my guys now, we're going to behave and act like the 1 seed. Champions were champions before they were champions. But really and truthfully, these guys have been primed and battle tested and ready for opportunities like this. So, we worked real hard to get this bye week because we needed it, because going through the Catholic League, you're physically getting tested. So we could use a little bit of rest. We're going to have a great week of practice in front of us, and then just see what happens on Friday on who our next opponent is. One of them obviously is one we're familiar with, and another one's been a staple in the state, as being a state championship contender year in and year out and being in the conversation. So we'll look at film on both of those guys this week and just kind of get a beat on, what we think we like to do against them, depending on which one we get.
Coach, you had a kind of an odd Week 10 matchup. The old Week 10 open date is kind of a tough one to fill sometimes. But you're able to fill it with a quality opponent, East St. John, that goes 7-3 on the year. They come to you, and so you have that tough job as a head coach of scheduling a Week 10 open date. But then you get a quality opponent, and you're able to go get a really big win against them. So how does a win like that? Obviously, your district is your district, and it's really tough. But what does it mean in Week 10 to go outside the district, play a really quality opponent, and win the way you did? How does that propel you into the bye week, and how do you not lose the momentum when you have a week off?
Yeah, I think practice structure fixes the momentum. I think we got a great staff of guys. Not overly concerned about that. I think we'll be fine just keeping that momentum, keeping that excitement. But I'll tell you, we talked at the beginning of this year, we talked about 2 words that really kind of was the message to our team going into the season: relevance and dominance. Our school and our program has been extremely irrelevant for a long time. And then even when I played, we were constantly second fiddle to some of the teams in our district. And I told him, I said, you got to find a way to get yourself relevant. And the only way to do that is to beat top quality teams, starting week 2 with a De La Salle, week 4, a Rummel, then you backdoor with a win against Curtis. Then you come back in the second half and beat St. Aug, and you lose 2, and you find a way to beat your big time rival in Jesuit. And I told him in the pregame speech going into East St. John, I said 2 things to him. I said, you've gone 9 weeks where you've become relevant. People now are paying attention to you. What you haven't done is you haven't done anything dominant. Now it's time to express your dominance over somebody going into the playoffs. And, 565 yards of offense, I think, is pretty characteristic of being a dominant performance. And then that obviously to be the catalyst to keep us going momentum wise into the playoffs. So these guys have heard the message, man. they're buying into what we're selling as coaches. And, look, if we played Jesuit, I can tell you, we won 30-0, but we felt like we left a lot of points off the board, man. We got very sluggish in the second half offensively. We didn't finish in a dominant way that we would like to. We haven't obviously seen Bird yet, but the message is, again, dominance. You're relevant now. Now it's time to be dominant, like some of these programs that have been in our district and then just programs around the state have been doing for the last 10, 25 years and such. So we're trying to get in that conversation, man. We haven't been in a long time, and it's good for our community to feel like we are in it right now.
To come in and say, look, this program hasn't really been relevant the last couple of years.
Yep.
How much does it help to be a Holy Cross guy, to have that message heard and received the correct way, and not be an outsider coming in and saying something like that?
Yeah, I think it helps. It definitely, and I'm young enough to where my years of playing aren't that far off. I think that helps as well. So I can kind of go back into the memory bank and just give some real experiences on what it was like, even in my 4 years that we played. I think it helps tremendously. But I think more than anything, man, something that needs to be stated is, we got 13 coaching staff, guys on our staff that include me, and 12 of them are absolutely incredible. We got 2 guys with head coaching experience, longtime Catholic League coaches. We got guys that have won state championships. We got 9 out of 13 guys that play collegiate football. We got 3 that are in Hall of Fames collegiately. We got 3 that played professional. So, that type of experience and knowledge that's being consistently poured into our players, I think helps tremendously. So it's not just hearing a message from me, but it's also hearing a message from 12 other guys that have been there before. And like anything, you want to be rich, you mimic the rich, right? You don't go find somebody that doesn't have money. You want to be successful, you mimic the people that have had success in the area that it is. And we've got 13 guys that have had ultra success as individuals and been on teams that have had success. So we've used that to our advantage, and our kids buy into that for sure.
Coach, I appreciate you. We appreciate you taking some time on a Sunday to talk about all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know I'd feel remiss to not mention that the way the brackets fall, maybe the most excited person will be Andrew Lopez, who, if you guys get a chance to beat my alma mater, Jesuit High, twice in a span of a few weeks, I'll get to look forward to hearing from Lopes all off season long about that. So I know he's excited out in San Antonio covering the Spurs.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank y'all so much. Appreciate what y'all do for our community.
Appreciate you, Coach. Have a good one and enjoy the bye week. Get ready and good luck in the playoffs.
Thank you, guys. Y'all have a good one. Bye.
Yeah. They've done a hell of a job at Holy Cross.
Unreal.
In a hurry. We have, Scott was the last of our coaches we have scheduled. We've got a couple of players scheduled to join us here shortly. Ahmad Breaux from Ruston is next up, and then Jayden Scott from Archbishop Shaw. And then we'll kind of start going through a little bit more closely, you and I, looking at, okay, this matchup really caught our eye. This is, maybe an early upset potential type matchup. Early thoughts on predictions. Again, we haven't even had a chance to sit and fully look at these brackets and think about the matchups in detail. So it'll be just some early thoughts. We'll leave you out of that Holy Cross and Catholic High and everybody division when it comes to starting to look at how some things might shake out. But I think some awesome perspectives from some of these coaches and kids, some interesting little lines and mantras I hadn't necessarily heard before that resonate. And again, unfortunately, maybe Holy Cross gets to beat Jesuit for the second time in like 4 or 5 weeks or whatever, if it shakes out that way.
Jerit Roser is going to be a noted Bird fan probably this week. So we have our alma maters. There's a lot of like fun matchups. It was really great hearing from the coaches because the perspectives are so different. Like you have Dennis Dunn, 9-time state champion, who went to the college ranks and had nothing but success at LC, really put them on the map football-wise before he gets back into the high school ranks at Pineville and now North DeSoto. And then you have, Coach Scott from Holy Cross that we just heard from, who's got the unique distinction of being an alum of where he's working. So the sense of pride he has in his program, maybe outweighs a lot of the coaches you talk to just because it's different. It's different when it's home. And then Coach Scogin at Airline, Coach Scogin, who took over a solid Airline program that Coach Meeks did a really good job at. And last year kind of had a down year for their standards. And then, this year they come back, they go 9-1, the only loss being to the 2 seed in select Division I, Captain Shreve. And they have scored maybe more points than anybody in the whole state. I don't know the official breakdown in front of me, but, I think Airline averaged well over 40 points a game. I think that Parkway win in week 8 was probably their lowest output, which was 33, which is still, there's a whole lot of teams in the state that would kill to average 33 points a game. So great perspective from those coaches and just the different places there. Broc Prejean has been at Vermilion Catholic for a while now and had a ton of success. So to hear from all those different guys, as a coach, I know the work that goes in from they say January, but really it's the moments you lose or win it all in December until the playoffs start now. And it's quite a journey to get there. And I wish all these coaches the very best of luck. Luckily, I don't have to play any of them. Hopefully until the Superdome. But 4 really good men that are doing great things for their communities and their schools and investing a lot to impact some young people.
As I mentioned, got a couple of D linemen to kind of wrap up our guests, and I'm sure they will both have some great perspectives, kind of different areas of the state, as well as coming into the season from different directions. Ahmad Breaux, the LSU committed Ruston defensive lineman, who was a part of getting the Bearcats back to the Dome last year for the first time in quite a while, and then came into this year as considered one of the top tier title contenders, and they are the number 1 seed in that Division I non-select bracket. Ahmad, I'm sure you're not surprised by any of this. It's just doing what you guys expected to do. I mean, how has this regular season gone, and how do we feel being the number 1 seed?
This regular season, it was phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? We proved a lot of doubters wrong, especially the schedule we play. It's a very difficult schedule that we had ahead of us. Playing teams like Lafayette Christian, arguably the best team we played all season. Got past our longtime rival Neville. Played teams like Warren Easton, guys like that. It really prepared us to play for the playoffs and ultimately led us to getting this first round bye, 1 seed, and begin our long trip back to the Dome.
Ahmad, you talk about your schedule. Like you play in LCA, who's arguably one of the best teams in the whole state. You're only one of 2 losses this year. You get past Neville, who's a high seed again, who they always are. And you start off with a really good showing, against a really tough Warren Easton school. You fall 1 point short. It's your only loss of the season, and then you win 9 straight. And then you get into district where you're playing against Ouachita, who's coming off a really great season. You're playing against Alexandria, who was a point away from a state championship just in 2020. And then, of course, West Monroe, who's one of the most storied programs, in the history of our state. So you've played a tough road, maybe a tougher road than you might even play in the playoffs at points, So how's that tough road really gotten y'all ready for what's next? I mean, you went to the Dome last year. You fall a little bit short of a really good Destrehan team. I've seen a lot of Ruston football in my life. I'm from Shreveport. You guys have always been a really, really good program. But now, you're kind of even higher up than you're used to be. You're more in the upper echelon of being talked about as possibly the best team in the entire state. So how's this road getting you guys ready for what's to come when it's winter go home?
I can really attribute it to my coach, Coach Ball. Every team that we played in non-district, he made sure that every team has something that we need to work on in order to be the best team that we could be. Like Cabot, Arkansas's run attack. LCA's passing game, their versatility, playing an alien of a quarterback like Juwan Johnson, stuff like that. It really gets us ready for these playoffs that we face, and you never play or what they may have that you need to prepare for. So that really prepared us for what the road is to come, and it made us the best team that we could be.
What did the start of this season against Warren Easton, which obviously they end up forfeiting, and so you guys are statistically, officially undefeated run through the season, but they got y'all in a close one on the field early on, and there was a lot of conversation from Coach Ball and from you guys as senior leaders about just kind of a wake-up call and a realization of that none of this was going to be easy. What did that loss mean to you guys to kind of, whether it be the team as a whole or maybe some of the younger guys that were stepping into bigger roles, just kind of recenter, refocus, and humble you guys early in the season?
That loss, it really meant a lot because it was the start of the season. We wanted to start off on a good note, and ultimately it didn't. We came up this short, you know what I'm saying? As a leadership group on the team, us seniors, some of our lower classmen that had to step up and play in varsity, starting varsity, we all came together. We were like, there's something that we need to fix, connect collectively as a group, not only just on the field, you know what I'm saying? We had to figure out what's going on off the field also to limit us. And we got together, we found a solution, we named the problems, and we've been on a roll ever since, improving what we needed to improve. And that's how we made this long undefeated run, and got up to the upper echelon of the state.
Ahmad, you're sitting there in your LSU shirt. You're committed to be a Tiger. We don't have to talk about last night. I'm still upset too. We don't have to talk about that. But a lot of people like that mystery of signing day, picking a hat off a table. It's a lot of exciting stuff for a young kid. But, what kind of went in for you to kind of get your commitment out of the way to where you could really focus on the Ruston Bearcats and trying to win a state championship? So how much pressure does that kind of take off of you knowing that you're decided and that you can really just focus on Ruston?
It took a lot of pressure off me. Matter of fact, my original plan, I never thought I would be in this position to go to this university. I was committed to Duke at first, and I got that out of the way pretty soon in January. But the Tigers came along in the spring, and we were still in the off season, and I knew that's where I wanted to go. So I made my decision, and I kept it at that because at the end of the day, my goal right now is that I'm not in college football yet. I'm still trying to win this championship for my team. We're all trying to win the championship and do something that hasn't been done in a very, very, very long time. So it takes a lot of weight off of me. I don't have to worry about where I'm going here, where I'm going there, what this university is doing for me, what they're doing for me. You know what I'm saying? It's very calming and easy, way less stressful.
It's obviously a very select elite group of guys around the state that get to go on and play at the next level at LSU. And so in that Division I non-select bracket, there's only a few of you guys, but depending on how some things shake out in this first round, you and Kyle and Billiot could end up in a matchup against one another in round two. Or, we hope Jabari, a guy in 25 that LSU is among the teams recruiting, we're hoping he's healing up from that collarbone from a few weeks back. I don't think y'all would see him on the field, but you'd have a chance to kind of cross paths and catch up with him a little bit. How much do you guys as commits or recruits keep up with one another this time of year and kind of checking in, seeing how everyone's doing, what everyone's matchups look like, and talking about the potential of, a couple of us may actually cross paths here and what that might be like?
You know what I'm saying? We talk smack to each other, a lot. And, you know what I'm saying? I might play Damarian this week. That's the future, that's the future interior lineman that I'm going to be playing.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't thinking about my 9 on that team. Exactly.
Yeah, my 9, you know what I'm saying? I'll probably play against him. I'll probably play against Kylan, you know what I'm saying? That's a deep threat, very good receiver that we'll be able to match up against. And, we talk smack in our group chat, all this and that. We call each other, stuff like that. And what I'm saying? It feels good to be able to do that, knowing that all these great players are staying home and I get the chance to compete with them. And I'm saying it's it's a connective moment, but at the end of the day, our one goal is to beat them mercilessly. So, yeah.
I love you, dude.
Ahmad, let me just say, so 1990 is the last time Ruston High won a state championship. Okay, they've won 8 in their history, but it's been a while. It's been 33 years. A lot of people consider that Ruston High School 1990 team the best team ever in Louisiana. A lot of people will make that argument. All right, so you have history on your side of possibly having the best team ever to play in Louisiana high school football in 1990, win the state championship. All right, so it's been 33 years, older than anyone here on this call. All right, so what does your squad have to do for the next 5 weeks? All right, you got the bye, and then you got your road to the Dome. What does your particular team here in 2023 have to do to be talked about with those types of Ruston teams from the past?
We have to dominate, like not just get past a team, squeeze by a team, or just survive a team. You know what I'm saying? We have to absolutely, because that's exactly what they did. I'm talking about, I hear stories, they used to beat people 56-0, like games straight. Didn't allow points, and they had that touchdown. That was a sacred place. Nobody should be in there. So, but they had that type of mentality, that type of drive to be like, we're gonna dominate whoever's in front of us, and there's no surviving any team. We're gonna dominate team. So,
Ahmad, appreciate you, sir. Always a pleasure. Thanks for taking some time out of your Sunday. Enjoy that bye week, man, and good luck in that second week against whether it be Manine or Kylan or whoever's crew.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you.
You got it. See you soon, man.
Sure.
So I was trying to check it out. I think there are 5 LSU commits in that Division I non-select bracket, and 3 of them are in that little second round.
Good news as a Tiger fan.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see if we got Jayden Scott. Jayden, can you – there we go. Jayden's been in here all afternoon kind of listening to what everyone else was saying from around the state. His Archbishop Shaw Eagles getting ready as a 5 seed in that Division II select bracket. Jayden, how are we doing this afternoon? How is life on the West Bank right now?
I mean, life is good. We beat a tough Karen Crow team Friday. We won 8 straight games, so we're doing all right.
Yeah, I think that was – if folks hadn't already tuned in and realized some of the stuff that we were talking about in the spring of the state championship type potential that your crew could have, I think week 10 kind of sent a message around the state. How big was that matchup, whether it be for y'all from a testing yourselves again standpoint or a momentum standpoint, or just kind of continuing to get the word out, put the word out, Shaw's back up?
It was a very big game for us, but disappointed in how many points we allowed. 50 points, that's not how that's not what good defenses do. Shaw is known for defense, gang green, you know what I'm saying? So it was a great win, a great statement, but we got to be better if we want to go to state.
How much did that show? Because I was surprised by that score as well, and I went into the season excited about your defensive crew. But to see the way the offense has come along, to be able to score points and match a high-powered offense like Karen Crow, and maybe on not your typical night of Shaw football, still pull it out against one of the top teams in the state, how huge was that just from an offensive confidence standpoint?
I mean, our offense bailed us out. If you go look at our earlier games when we played teams like St. Aug and teams like St. Charles Catholic, very good offenses, defense, 13 points, 17 points, Those were our days, but, everybody has an off day. And our offense, they held up their end and they carried us that game. So as a defense, we got to come back when we come in the playoffs and carry our offense again, because it has to work together. You know what I'm saying?
Jayden, we'll just call that game against Carecrow kind of like a kind of an anomaly, like not really who you are defensively. Like you said, you look throughout the schedule, you allow 28 points early on in like week 2. But other than that, like you said, it's 13, 15, 17 at the most. and your offense has really been able to put up a lot of points. So, but from experience as a coach, it's really not a bad thing to see before the playoffs start that your offense can carry you and put up a lot of points when you do have the occasional off night, which you're likely not to have ever again the rest of the season, a night quite like that. You're facing against a team in Karen Crow who's incredibly talented, maybe as good as anybody in Division I Select. So, looking at your schedule, you have a bye, and then you're looking to face the winner of Evangel and Bel Air. So most likely going to be facing the Evangel Eagles, who have a long storied history. They have a really good defense themselves. So here on the bye week, what's the focus at Shaw, knowing that you don't officially have an opponent on Friday? You're just kind of going to be watching that Evangel Bel Air matchup. But what's the focus for you guys this week defensively to kind of refocus and rebound from maybe, like you said, a night you're not very proud of, still able to get the win? But how do you guys refocus, and how much does the bye week help in that?
The bye week is helping a lot. What we have to do is, what I have to do a better job as a leader is getting our younger kids back on track. We start 2 freshmen, and they're going to be put in more harder positions than what Karen Crow put us in. I think I have to do a better job of getting us to be more together. That game showed our holes as a defense. And as a defense, we're using this bye week to go back and watch more film. We're going to practice harder Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to fix our holes. As seniors, me, Lewis Foster, Cardell Allen, Dallas Braun, Collis Francis, Trevor Whittick, we have to get those younger guys to understand how important it is to not try to play outside your role. Because then when we go to play teams like St. Thomas More, I forgot who else was in that bracket with us. But
so the first matchup for y'all would be either Evangel or Bel Air, and then the second would be potentially BB and Company with JFK, or Vanderbilt Catholic or Douglas. And so those would be kind of the teams y'all would see for your first couple weeks.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. We have to get those younger kids to understand the aspect of staying in your role. If coach says you have the A gap, and if it's not there, dropping the coverage, then that's what you need to do. We don't want you looking into the backfield, and that's not your job, because that's how high-scoring games happen. We had a lot of those mistakes Friday where people were trying to play outside of their role. We have to minimize that. We also have to minimize the turnovers. If you go back and look at it, this is not taking a shot at our offense, but our offense fumbled every game this week. If we want to beat the next teams, turnovers have to stop. Defensive penalties have to stop. Miscommunications have to stop. So we have to use this bye week to criticize each other as players, helpfully, not to degrade anybody, but criticize each other as players so we can come back for the following weeks and do what we have to do to succeed.
Man, you want to talk about a party in the New Orleans area, a quarterfinal between Shaw and JFK would be worth whatever they want to charge admission-wise. All right, so, like you said, you have the bye week. You're getting ready to see what happens between Evangel and Bel Air. Most likely, if you were a betting man, I'd put my money on probably being Evangel, coming down to Shaw. Evangel doesn't do well historically against Shaw. That's a long trip from Shreveport. But when you're facing a team like Evangel with so many state championships and their history and people like that, you've already beaten, a team in Rummel this year that has a lot of history and has won state championships, so what would it mean for y'all to just the next feather in your cap to be maybe beating a team like Evangel that's respected so much throughout the entire state?
Our coaches tell us every week, our opponent has no face. When you go out there, you train. This is what we trained for in April all the way up to August before the season started. You take every team as serious as possible. You game plan for every team. And teams like Evangel, we respect them. But at the end of the day, and I hope they respect us, but at the end of the day, we can't focus too much on what they have done as a history of as a school. What we have to do is understand that, hey man, we dogs too now. We players too. We have to go out there and punch them in the mouth and just play our hardest.
We talk about some of the history and tradition of football in the state and that possible first playoff matchup against Evangel. For you as a guy, a young student athlete growing up on the West Bank, what has it meant to get a chance to play under a Hank Tierney coach Archbishop Shaw team to be a part of his return back to a place where, there's guys in the NFL or were in the NFL. Ryan Clark's all over ESPN talking about what it meant to be a part of that program years back. For you and your crew, how special has that been to be a part of getting the program back to this sort of a conversation like we're having, and to, be coached by Hank Tierney and that staff, Coach Bo and everybody that came back?
It means a lot. When you have different events at Shaw and you see all the historic Shaw players come back, the Ryan Clarks, the Sharon Carries, the Biamanis of the world, the people that people don't really, talk about. We see all of those players come back, and it's historic because that makes us want to submit our name in the legacy books. We thank Coach Hank for coming back because he's taught us accountability. He our first year with Coach Hank, taking the number 1 ranked team at the time in Turles Catholic 21-27. That showed us for our second year that, man, we can compete. A lot of people didn't think we could compete. We can compete with anybody. And we thank Coach Hank for giving us the confidence to feel and to play like we can compete. We just hear stories about Sharon Carey and how great he was and possibly being the greatest player to ever come up out of Shaw. And when you watch us and the younger kids, we want that for ourselves. And that's when you know you have something. When you have players that are willing to just give everything to win, that's when you know you have something as a team.
There you go. Jayden, I love talking to you, man. Appreciate you taking some time on a Sunday afternoon to chat about kind of where you guys are in the season and what's ahead.
Thank you, man. I was about to go to sleep. I forgot y'all said 150.
You got it, man. Well, go catch a nap. This is, with a bye ahead, this is as good a week as any to take some nap time in and rest up.
Yes, sir. Nice talking with you.
You too, man.
What an impressive, well-spoken kid.
He's one of my favorite members of this senior class around the state to talk to. If you talk to him, anytime you do it, there's a portion of it that almost feels like you're talking to a pastor that's like doling out life lessons left and right. And it's funny to watch him with some of those younger guys. They've got the Carter cousins who both played last year as a freshman and 8th grader, so now still underclassmen, and watching them kind of watch and listen to him. I think the role that he plays, and really that whole senior class with some of the guys he mentioned, Raymond Howard on the offensive side of the ball, another one of those seniors. I think he was mostly listed through defensive guys, but it's a good crew of players working under that good crew of coaches back there getting Shaw where they are.
Yeah, man, he makes you a believer just hearing him talk. You kind of want to, throw on some green and cheer for the Eagles just because so well spoken. Obviously, a testament to not only how he's being raised, but also what Coach Hank's been able to do in a very short amount of time, being back at Shaw. And so it's good for the state of Louisiana to see Shaw back really where they have always been, where they belong to be.
Yeah, like I said, put the word out. Shaw's back up, West Bank thing, all that. Some great guests, obviously. Do you feel like we can look through some of these brackets a little bit and just one by one each bracket? So let's take a glance, I guess, starting with the Division IV select. We had Coach Prejean from the Vermilion Catholic Eagles, the top seed in that group that we talked to early on in the show, now about an hour and a half ago or so, and kind of running down some of the top teams again. Vermilion Catholic, the 1 seed, and on the opposite side of the bracket, like we talked to Broc about, Southern Lab is the 2 seed, OCS, the state champions from a year ago that beat VC in the Dome, the 3 seed. And on down that list, St. Martin's is the 4, Riverside's the 5, 6 is St. Mary's, 7 is St. Frederick, and 8 is Opelousas Catholic. Waiting there for a winner between number 9, Ascension Catholic, who I really like. Chad Elsie's running the hell out of the ball behind that veteran offensive line, and 24th seeded Central Private. What else stands out to you about that group?
Man, really, like you said, the first thing that pops in my head, obviously, is an OCS Southern Lab semifinal, which gets me as a football fan just so excited. But the last team you mentioned is really interesting to me is Ascension Catholic. Ascension Catholic does nothing but win. They have nothing but success. Went to the Dome twice in recent memory under Dre Trosclair, who's now the head coach at Thibodeau High. Fell short to some really good Lafayette Christian teams, which is never a shame to lose to those guys. But God, they're just so consistent. They might be one of the most consistent programs in the state as far as how they're able to win 7, 8, 9 games every year in the regular season. Always go be at least a semifinal team. They always run the ball incredibly well. I think of horror stories of facing John Williams when I was at St. John and seeing him just run up and down the field on us. So it's nothing new for the Bulldogs, out there in Donaldsonville to be able to just really pound people into the ground.
I haven't seen Chad Elsey's stats from Friday night, but he was positioning himself to become Ascension Catholic's first 2,000-yard rusher who wasn't a member of the Williams family of Jermaine and John and company.
They're going to have a tough one coming off if they're able to win, which most of us probably think they will against Central Private. They're going to face an Opelousas Catholic team that's also really good and has done nothing but been successful lately. They play in a tough district out there with Catholic of Point Capilla, who's been really good, especially when they were under David Semino, who's now the head coach at Central. So they were able to really have a huge win, lopsided against Catholic of Point Capilla this year. So that's another one that's going to be really exciting in that Division IV select is Op Catholic and Ascension Catholic.
Yeah, we can't take anything for granted in any of these matchups, and this is a bracket that historically we've seen some teams make some Cinderella runs, but that's an interesting matchup, the potential of one of those versus Vermilion Catholic. The fact that St. Martin's team with Harlem Berry and that Riverside team with Dedrick Lasty, that was a district matchup that I don't know if St. Martin's wants to see him again, is happy for another shot, is kind of thinking, man, I wish they would have been on the opposite side so we didn't have to worry about him that early in the playoffs. But if seeds hold, that would be a rematch of a game that I was at that was very interesting to watch the way it unfolded. And St. Frederick, the 7 seed, is a team that doesn't have necessarily as much postseason history with Southern Lab as an OCS, but does have some big games along the way through recent years. And I believe recent LSU baseball commit William Patrick if he didn't rejoin the football team this week, was planning to rejoin now that he had the baseball stuff sorted out. I'd have to check with Coach Robinson up at St. Fred's and hear how that played out, if he is back in the fold, if he's ready. But that's a guy that on the football side had offers from Louisiana Tech and others, so it would be a huge addition if he is playing football again.
Yeah, like you say, Coach Andy Robinson does a really great job every year at St. Fred's. They're always in an incredibly tough district, with Ouachita Christian. Cedar Creek's had some good teams in recent years. It's tough, so they always have some good matchups against those guys. They're a team that we're not used to really talking about in the bye week conversation. Yeah. They're able to position themselves here as a 7 seed, earn a week off to recuperate, get healthy, and kind of prepare for what we assume will be a really tough matchup in Central Catholic, who's another team who finishes number 10 in the power rankings, and they end up playing a really tough district against Vermilion Catholic. So they're battle tested. So Central Catholic, if they're able to, top Hamilton Christian in the first round, they'll travel up to Monroe to face the St. Fred's team that doesn't have a ton of history hosting playoff games. But it should be a great environment. Like I said, Coach Andy Robinson's been there for a while and does an excellent job at St. Fred's.
Yeah, love Andy. We can't go through every team, certainly, but a couple of others that do have first-round games this week. Coach Reagan Smith in his first year at Glenbrook Academy, great job by he and the crew up there. They'll host a playoff game in an 11 versus 22 matchup against Sacred Heart, a team that I almost saw – actually a matchup that I almost saw a few weeks ago in St. Edmund versus Westminster Christian, a 14 versus 19. Kevon Johnson at St. Edmund's a fantastic, super productive sophomore running back. I was planning to head out that way and finally see him live before I saw that Amite and Sterlington were playing on the same night on a Thursday up in Tangi. And so there's some fun matchups without necessarily even having to wait for that second week of that bracket. But moving on to the non-select side of Division IV, and we'll just kind of keep rolling our way up and wrap up with the Division I matchups. But on the non-select side, the top 4 seeds with buys: Logan Sport number 1, Kentwood number 2, Oak Grove, the defending state champions, at number 3, Haynesville at number 4. After that huge win against rival Homer, shut them out 23-0 to kind of shake up some of the playoff brackets. We heard Hunter Bauer, a Haynesville alum from GoPreps.com, talk about some of that impact. But thoughts as we kind of look through this Division IV non-select group?
Yeah, man. Mama Hester, also a Haynesville alum, my house, loves her Tornadoes. But man, if I'm not much of a betting man because I always lose. But if I were to put money on the top 4 seeds in August in this bracket, I probably would have been right. If in some order, it's the usual suspects. Kentwood Kangaroos. What a really tough place to go play. Yeah. I mean, especially in the playoffs. You're into that water tower and it's tough. I've been there as an opposing coach before. And then Haynesville's just the consistency of them being so good every year. Only 2 head coaches in the past 60 years, similar to like a John Curtis type setup with the Franklin family, with Red now, his son David's in his 21st year as the head coach there. Just the consistency they've been able to show. And then Coach McGee, being an alum of Logansport, former quarterback, does such an incredible job. They earned their 1 seed without a doubt. 9-1, only lost week 1 to Calvary, who again, Calvary beat everybody on their schedule. So losing to them is no slouch. So Division IV non-select, it's the usual suspects. You'll have a few teams like a Homer. Richie Casey is also a Homer alum. He was a star at Louisiana Tech. I played against him. Was not fun. Does an incredible job. Loves Homer football more than anybody in the world. So he's the perfect man to lead that program. A team that's been and played for state recently. So, them as a 5 seed is a tough out for anybody when you get to those quarters and semis.
Yeah, I think the Pelicans are certainly one to watch in terms of some teams that do have first-round games that have a chance to make a little bit of a run. Hunter mentioned earlier the way that Mangum has finished the season, shaking back a little bit from some earlier losses. Jeanerette, that we talked to Traville, that's a really talented team that has bought in and is believing in itself after a rough winless season a couple of years ago, felt like they could win any game on their schedule. And so it'll be interesting to watch what kind of a run they could put together. Welsh, and number 8 seed, is a team that I've voted, I think, in the top 10 some weeks in their classification in the LSWA polls, are certainly in that cusp of top 10 to 15. And so some interesting teams along the way. Franklin with a UTSA commit, and Jayshon Johnson. They get to host Grand Lake, a team that made a run to a state championship game just a few years ago. And so some fun ones. Again, we think that the bulk of these really juicy matchups we're going to start getting week 2, but there's some nice ones on Friday night as well.
There is. There's some fun ones to see. White Castle hosting Babineaux. I can also, again, speak from experience just coaching in this area. Nobody wants to see White Castle in the playoffs. Like, they're scary. A guy, Javier Batiste, that they had a few years ago, was one of the most exciting high school football players I've ever seen play at any level. He could play basically any position on the field and be a troublemaker. So White Castle has a ton of tradition out there in Everville Parish. Nobody wants to see them, if they pull off an upset as a 9 seed over an 8. The 1 seed, Logansport, doesn't want to make that trip. That's a tough one. Yeah. And so, Division IV non-select is very tough. And then you have, of course, Oak Grove, the 3 seed, who is, we talk about consistent programs. Ryan Gregory at Oak Grove does an incredible job. They are in the mix every single year to win the whole thing. They line up with no swag whatsoever. They're like the Penn State when it comes to like uniforms. They don't need any extra flash. You wouldn't even know what school they represent looking at their uniforms. But they line up and they run the ball as good as maybe anybody in the entire state. They produce a lot of linemen to the next level, a lot of running backs. Oak Grove will be in the conversation in December, and they'll probably be in that semifinal matchup. And it wouldn't, it's going to be expected by most people.
Some similarities to their run last year, where they had a tough schedule, non-district, and they started, I think they were 2-3 or something at one point this year, and then just kind of kept rolling along and doing what they do. And they had key leaders back, including the quarterback Jackson Bradley, a defender, and James Harris, who's a college commit, and some others. I know JT Layton is a guy that Coach Gregory has told me so much about his long-term potential as a pass catching, but also physical tight end there for Oak Grove, that he's going to be a guy to watch in that 25 class. They lived it last year and knew better than to get down this year. And so they're playing their best ball at the right time. And even though they're a 3 seed, I think a lot of people will likely consider them a favorite in that bracket. That obviously, no disrespect to Logansport or Kentwood. I think we're going to have some phenomenal Division IV non-select games. Jumping up to Division III, and we can let's go non-select first. Stick on that side. We talked to Jena Giants coach Jay Roark, the top-seeded and undefeated Jena Giants, and we talked earlier with Hunter about how wide open that Division II non-select bracket can be. I think you can say some similar things about Division III as well.
Yeah, you can, because you have so many programs like, we talked about earlier, and now you talk about A-Meet. A-Meet is one of those schools that it doesn't matter where they're seated. they can go win a state championship from the 25 spot, and no one would be surprised. So here, they're 8. They're going to play Donaldsonville. Donaldsonville was able to play a complete schedule because they had a tragic event happen at one of their home games late in the year. But a solid Donaldsonville program. A-Meet's a really tough place to go play, as you know. Sterlington was able to pull a few weeks ago is not normal.
Yeah.
So A-Meet and Sumner in that second round is the 8-9 matchup. They just played.
Yeah,
and I think Sumner
won.
Pulled it off. Yeah,
that
a very
little
tough
quartet
matchup.
is one of the first things that jumps out to me in this bracket because that Donaldsonville team was leading the game that got suspended and could have realistically been a higher seed. One of their best players, they call him Juicy Otis, missed a portion of the season and was back and playing really well. I think had 3 touchdowns and an interception in their Week 10 game. And so that's a team that has the potential to, probably could have been a higher seed for a variety of reasons, and B, might be as confident as it has been at any point this season, just having him back on the field.
Yeah, A-Meet really can't think about Sumner. That isn't where their focus has to be. Their focus has to be on the Donaldsonville Tigers, making that trip out to A-Meet. Like you said, a team that probably should have been ranked higher, but is probably just fortunate and happy to be where they're at with a really good opportunity to go and play a really tough A-Meets program. And then the 5 seed sticks out to me also, Bogalusa. Bogalusa is coached by Cyril Crutchfield, who has been to the Dome twice as a coach. He took Port Sulphur and South Plaquemines to the Dome. So he knows what it takes. He knows what it's supposed to look like. And, the Lumberjacks will have a tough home matchup with Westlake, who's had some good years recently, the Rams. But the Bogalusa Lumberjacks are going to be a tough out, and they've definitely earned that top 5 seed.
Yeah, senior quarterback Ashton Levi that just controls things out there. I have had a chance to watch a lot of his film in the last couple of years and what he does for the Lumberjacks on Friday nights. I've seen him more in person on the 7-on-7 side, but is just a leader on that offense, and an offense that has put up quite a bit of points with him at the helm in the last couple of years. In that same area of the state, the Pine Raiders, if I'm not mistaken, number 7 seed, host Red River. That's a team that has kind of flown under the radar a little bit, but in this bracket was playing as well as anyone probably for a stretch outside of maybe Jena or Sterlington. North Webster hosts a Patterson team on a long trip. I think both those teams have some notable talent that'll be playing at the next level eventually, but that's an awful long trip, about as long of a trip as you can have in the state of Louisiana. And then whichever comes out on top of it gets to go to beautiful downtown Vacherie in St. James.
Yeah, Patterson's had kind of an interesting last few months. Their coach leaves for Lafayette High, but he leaves late. Like it wasn't like a December, January hire. It was late in the game. So, he was doing some really good things at Patterson. And so, Patterson was able to rebound, shake off the, losing their coach. They get a new coach come in. They finish as a 19 seed, and they're playing a North Webster program who Coach Ware does a really good job in North Webster every single year of keeping them relevant. Has produced a lot of really good players, obviously Devin White being the most notable, who plays obviously for the Buccaneers now, LSU legend. But like you said, whoever wins gets to go to beautiful downtown Vacherie and play one of the standards in the state of Louisiana, which is St. James. St. James has a tough Week 10, drops to an ED White team that's really, really good. And that's a great Week 10 district finale between those two programs. I've been beaten as a player by St. James on the road in the playoffs, so it's a tough place to go. Those people are passionate. They love their Wildcats, and talk about a school that does nothing but produce talent. You see it every time you turn on the SEC on Saturdays. You're going to see some St. James boys lighting it up. Alabama, Mississippi State. There's others. So a team that's going to be very athletic. They're going to be incredibly well coached. When Coach Valdez left for Grambling, they promoted from within because that's how much their culture means to them. So new coach has done an incredible job, and nobody wants to see the Wildcats, especially in November, December.
Guy and Levante Davis that had been with Valdez throughout his stops along the way, followed him at Scotlandville as head coach, been in West St. John years back, and led by a senior quarterback receiver duo in Braden Williams and Kobe Brown, who have played at a high level for a while there and been in some huge games. And they'll be ready for the playoffs. They lost that last one, but that was one of those top matchups in the state. There were so many in Week 10. Looking at the Division III select bracket, which quite honestly is one that I have looked most forward to throughout this season. When you talk about top seeded St. Charles, second seeded Calvary Baptist, we had Jay Simon join us today. Third seeded Isidore Newman the year after Arch Manning graduates, and Will Randall and that great 23 class. They have a still very talented and well-coached team under Coach Nelson Stewart. The 4 seed U High, a team that everyone anticipates as a state championship contender pretty much year in, year out. 5th seeded Catholic New Iberia, 6 Bunkie, 7 Dunham, and 8 Darbone Woods Charter. Just kind of running through that. I think also a lot of high-seeded teams that we probably could have bet on months ago and been pretty accurate.
Yeah, and obviously number one, being St. Charles doesn't shock anybody. They're finally next year, 2024, gonna stop picking on these poor little 2A schools, and they're gonna go play some 4A ball. But in their last run here in 2A in Division III Select, they earned the top seed. Big win over Lutcher early in the year. They're not afraid to go up in classification, which kind of makes them know that 4A is something they can handle in all sports. Right. Coach Wayne Stein, incredible man, does an incredible job. Athletic director, was the head baseball coach for a long time and head football coach now since Coach Monica retired. And just such an incredible job at St. Charles. And then my alma mater, Calvary Baptist, is number 2. I think all of us really knew Calvary had a special formula this year to be really, really good. You look at their schedule and you're kind of like, ooh, they're going to be good. But then they beat everybody. They beat Shreve. They beat Logansport, who's a 1 seed. Shreve's a 2 seed. They beat Westgate. They beat Wassman, whose defense is unbelievable. And they beat a Bird team that, regardless of record, is still Bird. Still one of the most respected programs in North Louisiana. And so then you get into the 3 seed Newman, like we've talked about. The Manning family legacy there always puts themselves in the conversation of being a top seed. And then they're staring at everyone as the 4 seed U High, who big win over Catholic High by a point earlier this year. Incredible program. Coach Andy Martin does an incredible job. Keelan Moses is a grown man playing against children. Not your typical what you look at in a high school athlete. I mean, I coached against him when he was a freshman, and he looked like he was 30.
Yeah, he was a grown man as a freshman.
Obviously comes from a great family lineage himself, with his family having some NFL ties. But man, those top 4 are just absolutely nasty. Yeah. And it wouldn't shock anybody at all if those are the 4 that make it to the semis. And then if you end up with one of those 2, obviously making it to play against each other. But you can't sleep on a team like Catholic and New Iberia, who's made deep playoff runs. Coach Wattigny from Holy Cross was there and took them to the state championship, where they were able to finally overcome that Notre Dame monkey on their back. So, and then had some battles with them at Calvary back in the day with Jason Pellerin, who goes on to Ole Miss to be a tight end as their quarterback. And so Catholic and New Iberia has made a lot of deep runs before, so they know what it takes and they know how to make it. But I just got to it's going to be tough for anybody outside the top 4 to make it to the semifinal round, just because you're going to have to travel to one of those really tough environments. Newman's got a unique setup. U High in the shadows of Alex Block Stadium is a really tough place to go get a win. Calvary comes out with their smoke torches that they've been doing this year, and it's a really tough place. And St. Charles obviously is one of the standard bearers in Louisiana in any classification as far as what it means to be an elite program.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at this and starting to project or bet or whatever the case may be, you feel like chalk in terms of who reaches the semis probably holds true. But you mentioned some of those teams that have a chance to mix that up. I really like that Bunkie group. It would be tough for them they would have to beat Episcopal in their first playoff game and then go to Newman and win one there potentially if Newman's able to take care of business. And that's a tough combination of games early in the playoffs if you're trying to make a deep run. And then that Dunham team would be a quarterfinal matchup for Calvary Baptist. Jay Simon mentioned them earlier that they kind of look forward to the opportunity to have another shot at those guys after last year. But that Dunham team surprised a lot of people last year with a run to the Dome. Had to replace some key seniors from last year's class. But Elijah Haven as a freshman quarterback is about as much as you could ask for as a freshman leading an offense. And they've had some guys really step up and replace that graduated 2023 class. So some good teams elsewhere along the way. They'd have to beat Parkview Baptist or Jefferson Rise Charter to get that far. But Dunham Tigers would be an interesting quarterfinal matchup for Calvary with a little bit of recent history.
Yeah, you talk about another coach that does just an incredible job. Neil Weiner, obviously the son of legendary Catholic High coach Dale Weiner, has had success everywhere he's been at Dunham for a while now. Has tasted a lot of success. He finally gets to that state championship game last year. Falls short to a really, really good St. Charles. But another great year. They have an excellent quarterback last year, Coach Matt House from LSU's son.
Yeah, Jackson.
Jackson goes on to be a college quarterback and, takes them where they've never been before. And then right behind him, you think there's going to be a drop-off, especially at I've coached in 2A football before. When you have a player like Jackson House, that's like an anomaly. But then you have this really good young QB coming right behind him, which is a rarity at the 2A level. A kid that can do everything well, who scores with his arms, scores with his feet. He could probably call plays and all these other things too, and fill up the water coolers like they used to say about Poopy Miles.
Play a hell of a basketball game for sure.
Yeah, so an incredible athlete, and Coach Weiner always has his teams ready to play. And you see them also; they're not scared to go play top competition in non-district. They always have that one really tough district game with Episcopal every year. But other than that, their district's not incredibly challenging to them. So they go out and they schedule a lot of really tough games. They played Catholic High in the Jamboree, I believe, last year, and had an incredible showing against them. They played Parkview this year. They played U High before, beat U High in the playoffs last year. So the Dunham Tigers, who've always been a really good program, I think are kind of reaching a really good era of even higher than what they're used to as far as their production level. Coach Weiner always won a ton of games, coached against him, played against him when he was a coach. So I've had a lot of experience with him. He's a great dude. But he's really gotten that program to a whole new level. And I think they're going to continue it for a really long time, especially with the fact that their quarterback's like 14.
Yeah. 14 and already several inches taller than I will ever be, and doing some things on the football field and basketball court that I have never and will never do. That Division II non-select bracket where we talked to Coach Dunn of the top-seeded North DeSoto Griffins. A year ago, I looked at them by the time we got to the playoffs and thought that they probably make a run to the Dome. But I think certainly I wouldn't have bet that at the beginning of the year. I didn't know enough about them then. And I think even at that point last year that most people didn't anticipate it outside of maybe football coaches around the state. This year, I think everyone kind of looks at them and says that's the team to beat, or certainly a top team to beat. And it's a group that will, again, have a lot of competition, but he talked about they're now the hunted instead of being the hunters from a year ago.
Yeah, and Coach Dunn's used to that being hunted role, in his experience as a head coach in our state. I'm a firm believer in Coach Dunn and his abilities to not only win football games, but to lead young men and impact them and make them better. Just give Coach Dunn time. Anywhere he coaches, if it starts out rocky, just give him time. He won 4 consecutive district titles at Woodlawn way back in the late 80s. He comes to Evangel and really, more than maybe anybody else, makes Evangel football what it is today. Wins 9 state championships. He goes to the college ranks, LCU, does incredibly well. It was Louisiana College when he was there, but now Louisiana Christian. They're having a great year also, by the way. And so Coach Dunn does an incredible job. North DeSoto is now being hunted. It's a new role for North DeSoto. They were always, when I was in school in North Louisiana, had some run-ins with them, always so tough. Tough place to go play in Stonewall. It's really tough. But now, like you said, they're the hunted, and there's a target on their backs, maybe more even than anybody else in the bracket. You have the defending champion, Lutcher, who dropped a few this year. They dropped kind of a surprising game to Assumption, who actually plays them tough a lot of times. Really good defense at Assumption. They dropped one to St. Charles Catholic, who everybody else did too, that they played. And so Lutcher's not going anywhere. They're not to be an afterthought. But I think you're right that when people look at that bracket, they're like, okay, North DeSoto's a team to beat.
Yeah, and Lutcher's right in there in that mix in terms of the rest of the pack that is trying to upend a top-seeded North DeSoto. And honestly, if Dwayne and company down in Lutcher are watching this, they're probably loving the way that we're talking about this and saying, sure, yeah, if you upend North DeSoto, don't worry about the Lutcher Bulldogs, and kind of getting a little bit fueled by that. But number 2 seed, Cecilia, super talented, versatile team with athletes that they utilize in some pretty interchangeable ways. Diesel Solari, the quarterback slash DB slash receiver slash running back slash returner, whatever they need him to do. One of the bases of that program, but there's a ton of talent for the Cecilia Bulldogs. The third seed, that Assumption team we mentioned, Chase Jacobs, the nephew of former star Brandon Jacobs at running back, and Reese Turner, who stepped up and filled the role of quarterback, converted wide receiver. Those two dudes are playing phenomenal, kind of a pick your poison situation for opponents. Lutcher is the 4 seed, so that's the 4 teams that have those buys. Looking around at some of these matchups that we'll have week 1, we've talked some about that group of Westville versus Minden and Opelousas versus Rain as kind of a group that stands out. Abbeville gets to host a playoff game. We talked about them a little bit with Hunter. I think it's their first district title in like almost 3 decades. 27 years under Coach Rod Moy and company, who they've been doing a really good job the last couple of years getting that program back to that point. And the Leesville St. Martinville matchup and on down the list. There's some good ones.
This is the most wide open bracket, I think, maybe in the whole state. And I said that last year about it too, and I coached in it with Louisiana last year. I mean, you have your top 4 teams, all of them earn their spots, but this is the kind of bracket where 8, 9, 10 could win state. It wouldn't shock anybody. You know, nobody wants to see this Plaquemine squad coming off a district championship. You know, one of the youngest coaches in the state, old Donald over there, is doing a really good job. Iowa, who this year being an 8 seed's kind of unfamiliar for them. They've been one of the top seeds lately. I've coached against them. They're an incredibly tough out. A lot of college pipelines. Sent a couple guys to Purdue in recent years. West Feliciana, you know, loaded with talent. Joel Rogers there, the LSU commit, who plays everything for them. Incredible young man. Was going to have them ready for playoffs. Opelousas is a scary matchup for them in the round number 2. That's a 12 seed.
They've got some good seniors, but that 2025 class of Opelousas is absolutely ridiculous.
And then on the bottom of the bracket, Assumption, Wassman, Leesville, and Cecilia as your top seed. Like, this bracket's wide open, man. Like, you know, Wassman's defense is incredible. They have a matchup with the local team for us here, Bruley, in the first round. You expect Coach Cahey to have those boys ready to flip the script and ignore and forget about that kind of Sterlington Week 10 district title where they fell short. Their defense didn't play up to their own standards that they've set. You expect them to be ready to go against Bruley. You know, Franklin Parish, Coach Burnett does an incredible job there. That Franklin Parish. You know, he's a Tulane alum. He's a receiver on that 98 undefeated season team. So Coach Burnett does an incredible job. I was talking to him just yesterday. He's really excited about his team and what they can accomplish in the playoffs. You know, Assumption with, you know, Brandon Jacobs' nephew, big district championship win for them, especially over a Lutcher, who's one of the blue bloods in the state, earning that 3 seed. Kind of sad that they're not together. I'd love to see that matchup again before the Dome, but it's another possible Dome setup. And then Eunice, who's good year in, year out, won a state championship just a few years ago. And so, you know, this bracket is wide open, and I don't think there's really any safe bet on who's going to win it right now. I think you just have to take it week by week and see what plays out, because I don't think any of these top 4 seeds is comfortable. They know it's going to be tough every week to make it to New Orleans.
A lot of good running backs throughout this bracket too. We hit on a few of them, but that 7 versus 26 matchup, you get Xavier Ford versus Stephen Blanco, a Cajuns commit for St. Martinville. And so that'll be fun, and some folks might get home early if those guys are running the way they want to run the ball. And then the 10th seed Jennings Bulldogs have Prejean Zeno, and always run the ball well for Jennings, and has made runs all the way to the Dome as a lower seed. So being a 10th seed for them doesn't really phase them in the least. But that little quartet of Jennings versus Kaplan and Leesville versus St. Martinville, some teams that are going to try and punch each other in the mouth a little bit and keep the ball on the ground.
Dude, what is it about running backs from Jennings, Louisiana?
Yeah,
they've
had a hell of a lineage.
Yeah, you have the ETN boys. It's been absolutely insane for a small community to continue to produce this elite talent at the running back position that for some reason we can't keep here for college. We need to do better about that. But man,
LSU fans are frustrated enough right now.
Yeah, we are. Take it easy on us. But like you said, the Jennings Bulldogs, man, being a 10 seed's a tough out and scary for anybody. Like, yes, the way they run the football every single year, producing such elite talent at the running back position, usually plays quarterback for them because the offense they run. But, the Jennings Bulldogs are a tough out. Church Point is the 18 seed.
Yeah.
Man, I've coached against Church Point in a quarterfinal a few years ago and got our butts kicked. Church Point is a tough place to play, especially if they're able to pull off an upset and get to host. That's a tough place to go play. Church Point's incredibly well coached. Coach Poole was a DC there before he became the head coach. So he's the culture, he's well into it. Church Point's a team that as an 18, I don't want to see. And then that 15 seed Iota's really good this year. Them being a 15 seed is kind of a surprise. The talent they have is definitely top 10 worthy. Maybe had some slip ups that got them a seed they're not very happy about, but they're at home against a really Iota Church Point. That's gonna be a fun game.
You want to bounce over to the Division II select group, where I think Class 4A and certainly the Division II select, everybody looks at that STM LCA duo throughout the year, and Turlin's Catholic in that same district. And on the public school side, Westgate, that we'll talk about in one of these next brackets. But on top of some of those powerhouses in Lafayette, E.D. White trucks along and has an undefeated regular season capped off by that big win against St. James. They end up the number 2 seed after LCA's lost to STM. The 4 seed we mentioned before when we were talking to Jayden Scott from Shaw. 4 seed is JFK with the LSU committed cornerback Bernard Beebe Causey. Jayden and his Archbishop Shaw. Eagles at the 5 seed. Number 6 is St. Louis Catholic. 7, that Turling's Catholic team I mentioned. 8, the St. Michael's, the Archangel team that certainly well here in Baton Rouge. And so those are the 8 teams that have buys. I think people will largely anticipate that we get a 4th LCA STM matchup of the last 2 years. And there's certainly a great chance that occurs. But some of these other teams, like a 2nd seeded E.D. White or an Archbishop Shaw, have a chance to kind of turn this thing on its head and mix that up quite a bit.
Man, like you said, it's going to be tough. E.D. White goes 10-0, and you really judge teams based on how do they do against elite competition. Their 2 biggest games this year were against St. James, who they beat for the district championships, and then the 3 seed in the previous bracket we discussed, Assumption. They beat Assumption 41-13.
Yeah.
Coach Kyle is saying, head coach there for a long time, kind of steps away for a little bit, comes back to E.D. White and picks up right where he left off, and actually has more success in his second run than he had in his first. And so, like you said, that everybody's kind of expecting that LCA STM matchup again. But LCA, if they make it to the semis, has to go to Thibodaux, Louisiana, in a really tough environment there against E.D. White. And like you said, there's some matchups there in the first round, especially in the second round. The Madison Prep Turlings potential in the second round, who obviously I know Madison Prep well. You know Madison Prep well. We've both seen them play a dozen times.
Yeah, they're right around the corner from me.
Yeah, St. Louis Catholic is having a really, really nice season. Potentially with McDonough 35 there in the second round. Lafayette Christian earns them a bye. John F. Kennedy, as we've talked about, earns a bye. Shaw and Evangel in the second round is one I'm really intrigued by. Way back when Evangel had their 60-0 stretch, 2000, they opened the year at Shaw in the Superdome and lose and ends their winning streak. So there's guys on staff at Evangel right now that were on that team. Josh Alexander, who played collegiate linebacker at ULM, is back as the DC. Denny Duran never forgets. So, he's looking forward to that one. And another one I'm looking forward to, St. Michael. St. Michael, when I first moved to Baton Rouge, when I was finishing up college, I was a coach there for 2 years. Coach Zach Leger is an alum. He's the head coach there at St. Michael. Nobody loves St. Michael football on this planet more than Zach Leger. St. Michael has never won a playoff game in school history. They have never won a playoff game. They've earned a bye a few times, but they've never head-to-head won a playoff game. And you're looking at them now, most likely at Olympia Stadium next Friday, hosting the winner of Livingston Collegiate and Booker T. Shreveport, and a really good, solid chance to get that massive gorilla off their back and win that first playoff game. And they've got the team to do it. Their running back, Martinez, is stud. He's breaking every school record, which is ironically held by most of them are held by Sam Houston head coach Chad Davis, breaking all of those school records for most attempts, most yards, most touchdowns, all in one season in a really tough district with Westphal and Plaquemine and Estruma. And so St. Michael's had a really nice season. Leger is a good buddy of mine, does a really good job. And so they have a really good chance to kind of make some history. And then that Northside Astruma matchup at 16-17 is a fun one. Coach Carter at Northside, former LCA DC, no stranger to winning big games. We played them this year at Catholic High, and they were incredibly tough. Astruma, I've got more love for Sid Edwards than maybe almost anybody else. His son Cody is a good friend of mine, and he's got that program on the right track.
Yeah.
They lost some heartbreakers this year to Westphal. They blew a 29-point lead to Westphal. Some really tough late season slip ups for Astruma. Probably should be seated a lot higher than 17. But like you said, the standard is STM and LCA in that division. But Edie White went to the state championship game just 2 years ago against U High and lost a 1-touchdown game. So Coach Kyle Sain's capable of making a run, toppling LCA in the semis at home, and then squaring off with the Cougars maybe for the whole thing.
Yeah, that Cardinals team is rolling right now, and we are traditionally used to seeing them in kind of that ball control offense, and they're still going to run the hell out of the ball and minimize miscues and make you or allow you to beat yourself. As we saw them really scare U High a couple years ago, a little bit more than I think many people anticipated, but they throw the ball around a little bit more too. Coach Lassane and Coach Chess on the OC, they have Jake Sternfels, an experienced returning starter at quarterback, Passion LaFont, and some of the weapons on the outside that they're finding ways to utilize. And so a little bit of a different look in some ways to that team that I think can pose some problems to anyone in the state, really. We mentioned a couple of those first-round matchups that are interesting. Peabody versus Booker T. Washington, New Orleans, a team as a 19 seed in Booker T that has some talent under Coach Wayne Reese Jr., has to go up to Peabody, where Harry Coleman, the former LSU safety and linebacker, has the Warhorse playing really well. Really gave Tioga a heck of a game a couple weeks ago.
Should have won that game
in district, and came up just short. And you mentioned another one that I love, that Northside and Astruma, just two teams that have some history of being really good at different points. Astruma, some of it a little ways back, but have coaches that have had success elsewhere that have them both looking pretty resurgent.
Yeah, man, might be our last LCA STM matchup for a long time. LCA is going back down.
Mm-hmm.
They elected to not play up in 4A in the next class, so they're kind of going to be replaced by St. Charles. And it's a shame for us as fans, apparently, of not defense, to see LCA and STM play. Might get our last chance in the Dome this year. But both teams have very tough roads to get there. It's not a cakewalk. They have to take each week very seriously to earn their spot there in the Dome again.
That Division I non-select group, we talked to Ahmad Breaux from the top-seeded Ruston Bearcats. They're, again, the number 1 seed. Neville, a Class 4A team, is the 2 seed in that bracket. The defending state champion Destrehan Wildcats are your 3 seed. And we talked to Coach Scogin from Airline, has the Vikings with that 4th bye on the non-select side. All very capable teams. We saw 2 of them in the Dome last year. We talked with Justin about how effective that Vikings offense in particular has been, but just how good that team has been overall. Neville has been the last 10 to 20 years as much of a top-tier program through the years as anyone. So great high seeds, but I think this could be a real fun. I think both the Division I brackets could be real fun when we look at some of these teams that have games this Friday that might be poised to make some deeper runs.
Yeah, man. And like you said, 5A is always it's a who's who, especially at the top. You're going to see the usual suspects. Ruston, being the number 1 seed, is not traditionally where they're at, but they've gotten back to prominence in recent years. Coach Ball does an incredible job at Ruston, playing one of the toughest, if not the toughest, non-district schedules in the whole state. And then he has to play in a district with Ouachita, West Monroe, and Ash, who are tough every single year. All those teams have Superdome experience. And so Ruston earns that top seed. Airline, incredible season. The 1 loss to district rival Captain Shreve, earns a 4. Destrehan, who is always Destrehan. I've been down there for a playoff game before. My older brothers at Evangel had some wars at Destrehan when they were playing. It's a tough place to go play in the playoffs. And then Neville, the 4A school, who's in this new system, is pushed up, and they earn I believe they were the 2 seed last year also, or one of the top 2 seeds. I believe it was them and Easton last year in that bracket were 1 and 2. And so Neville, no stranger to being a top seed, even when they're punching up, in class. Those are the buys, but there's some first round matchups that are insane. East St. John Central, 15-18. That's going to be a heck of a ball game, man. East St. John, if you look at they're 7-3 this year, their losses were to a who's who. They lost to St. James, they lost to Holy Cross, top seeds in their own brackets. The E, as they like to call it, is doing some big things this year. Maybe the best 15 seed that you'll see in any bracket. And then Central, Coach David Semino, longtime Catholic Appoint Compete head coach, goes to Catholic High, wins the state championship. And then he goes over to Central, and Anthony Camp, his defensive coordinator, who's coached a lot of different places in the area, Parkview and Catholic High, and then most recently was the linebacker coach at Louisiana Tech. Comes down back to the high school ranks, DC at Central. That whole staff, man, that is a physical, tough football team. I coached against them this year. They run the ball incredibly well. Coach Semino always will have his teams ready to go. He's a great motivator, great X's and O's guy, but a great guy that really cares about his kids. He's going to do a lot of big things in Central for a very long time.
I think the only thing I don't like about that matchup is that they're both Wildcats mascots. And so as a former newspaper writer, I consistently hate having to use the school name over and over again without being able to mix up the mascot names without it being confusing. But that's, I think, probably one of the top matchups in the state at any level this Friday. East St. John started 7-0 before running into those stumbles the past few weeks against Tyrone, Destrehan, and Holy Cross. And Central, as you mentioned, played you guys at Catholic, super tough, played Zachary, super tough. And so is certainly battle-tested and ready to get on the road and face anyone. It just happens to be a good East St. John team that slipped a little bit down to 15. The group that would potentially match up against, whether it be East St. John, Central, or Neville, that Dutchtown, South Lafourche, Chalmette, and Ponchatoula group, I think, has a lot of teams that are a little bit lower seeded, but on a given Friday night can compete with anybody in the state and have some recent playoff history of doing so. And I think you see that in a lot of places on this bracket.
Yeah, and Ponchatoula just played for a state championship just a few years ago. And they produce so much talent. Tajee Spears, who plays now for the Tennessee Titans, was a stud at Tulane. Probably my favorite player in the country last year in college football. And then, a team like Chalmette, 9-1 season, incredible for the Owls. They're one of the most active Twitter voices of any program in the state. They always have a lot of great history that they share out, earning the 10 seed. And then Dutchtown, who's always a very talented program, kind of slipped up a little bit in district, kind of probably expected to win that district outright. But a little bit of a slip up. They earned the 7 seed, which is still, an incredible season for them.
Came back with a huge Week 10 win against EA, fairly lopsided, I believe. And so they have regained some momentum heading into the postseason.
Yeah, and then South Lafourche being the 2016 year, the Tarpons from down in the Bayou area are going to have to make the not so long trip up to Dutchtown, but Dutchtown, the Griffins, that's a tough place to play in the playoffs as we've seen in recent years. And then, man, Zachary being 6 is terrifying for a lot of people. We just played them last Thursday night at Catholic High, an incredible high school football game, maybe one of the best you'll ever see. It goes to overtime. Coach Brewerton does an incredible job, and his staff every single year of having Zachary always in the conversation of not only being a top seed, but winning the whole thing. Coach Brew does an incredible job and always has, really everywhere he's been. And so, Zachary's going to be a really tough out. That quarterfinal maybe against Destrehan is must-see TV. Hopefully, somebody puts it on TV because it's going to be a good one. And you kind of see that the roads to get there for Destrehan and Zachary are kind of things you expect them to handle. So you could kind of write in maybe not in Sharpie, but in very dark pencil. That be your quarterfinal match at the bottom of the bracket.
Yep, some good ones up top as well. Walker, a team that I think after a great season, we're both interested. We've seen kind of the scores come out. We're interested to see how they do at this time of year heading into the playoffs. They open against Benton, and then the second round match would be either West Monroe or North Shore, 2 teams with some recent success West Monroe, obviously, with long-standing tradition of success pretty much every year, and feels just by West Monroe standards, since that Zachary game, largely overlooked. The way that Zachary beat them, they kind of fell off the radar a little bit, but they've played well since then. They were in a one-score game with Ruston for a district title. So maybe don't completely overlook the Rebels just yet, at least to make a little bit of a run, possibly set up a quarterfinal matchup with Ruston again.
Yeah, and like you said, you can't overlook the Rebels. They faced a lot of adversity this year. Their coach kind of gets let go early in the year after they had only two coaches for like 30 years.
Yeah.
You have Don Chowes, who resurrects that program, wins multiple state championships, does an incredible job. He hands it off to Jerit Roser, who was one of his longtime assistants, who did an incredible job. Then Coach Aldridge retires, and they go in a different direction with a new coach. Some tough times for those kids, but they did an incredible job, especially after, like you said, that Zachary loss.
Yeah.
Which, if you want to look back at history, you're going to have to go back a long time to find a team that went to West Monroe and won by that kind of margin. Maybe before Coach Chowes.
Yeah, probably.
And so West Monroe's done an incredible job. They're a resilient program. They always are. They're always in the conversation. Really tough one against Ruston in Week 10, a game that they probably could have won. It's a one-touchdown game. So they know that they can stand toe-to-toe with the best team in their bracket. And so it's going to be an interesting possibility of a quarterfinal matchup between the Rebels and the Bearcats, two teams that obviously know each other real well.
And you can't say as much about this Division I select bracket potentially. Certainly predictions off the table, but you will be a 3 seed in that bracket. You guys at Catholic High have a bye this week. We talked to Coach Scott Wattigny at Holy Cross back at his alma mater. They're the top seed. Captain Shreve, we mentioned, under Adam Kirby, the 2 seed. You guys, the 3 seed. 4th is Brother Martin. 5th, Edna Carr, who slipped from potentially a 1 seed when they lost that Week 10 game against John Curtis. And if it got to it in the quarters, that Brother Martin Edna Carr game was really good in district. The 6th-seeded John Curtis Patriots, who climb up there and get a bye after the big win in Week 10. St. Paul's a 7 seed, and then Acadiana, who we talked to, Russell Babineaux, an 8 seed, enjoying that bye and the potential of having to face district rival Karen Crow, a 9 seed, in their first playoff game. If Karen Crow takes care of Pineville, it would be similar to the STM LCA deal out there in Lafayette. 2 powerhouses seeing each other for the 4th time in 2 years.
Yeah, so not a lot of picks from me on this one. But an incredible bracket, like it always is. And like I mentioned earlier, like for a really long time, it was always the Catholic League and Catholic High in this bracket.
Yeah.
But now with the new structure, you add in some incredible teams like Acadiana and Karen Crow, Captain Shreve, some teams that really kind of spice things up and add in the North Louisiana element a little bit to this bracket that they didn't have. Us at Catholic High, overcame a lot of adversity early in the year, played a really tough schedule. I'm really proud of, Coach Fuller and the job he does with the varsity staff. Just a lowly freshman coach. So, but no, Coach Fuller did a great job this year, his first year at Catholic. Our kids are resilient, and they fought really hard throughout some tough times early in the year and rallied around each other, and finished the year in a very positive way and earned that 3 seed. But at the top, Holy Cross, we talked to Coach Wattigny, an incredible job by him as an alum. Acadiana and Karen Crow in the second round will be a lot of fun. Like you said, Edna Carr, Brother Martin, potential for a rematch. That game was a lot of fun in the regular season. And then St. Paul's coach Kenny Sears has, it seems like every single year, is always earning a top 10 seed. He's always an 8-9 win team, kind of controls that district down there, in the North Shore area. And then Captain Shreve, kind of in unfamiliar territory, as a top seed in the bracket. Like you said, Coach Adam Kirby does an incredible job for the Gators, kind of setting themselves up to be one of the standards in the Shreveport-Bossier area, which they've not really been. They've had some good seasons, but now when you talk about the top teams in that area, you think of Calvary and Airline, and then Shreve's right there. They beat Airline this year. Had a tough one with Calvary earlier in the year. So this Division I select bracket is going to be a lot of fun. It's loaded with incredible programs with a lot of coaches that do a great job. a lot of history, a lot of the blue bloods. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to see how it plays out.
Yeah, the Captain Shreve Gators had a 2 seed at one point when Kendrick Law, who probably not a name LSU fans want to hear today either, but when that crew was going through, didn't follow it up with a deep playoff run. And so that's probably something they're talking about this week in terms of not taking things for granted. But the way that they shook back from that Calvary loss was very impressive. They've really played their best ball of late and will look poised to potentially continue that into the playoffs. This is a bracket that, especially prior to last year, but still I think you end up seeing more rematches of regular season games than in any other bracket because of that New Orleans Catholic League contingent that's in here. And it is always so tough to beat the same team twice if you're anywhere in the same ballpark of talent level. And so watching how that affects the way this plays out will be interesting, as it always is. A couple of lower seeded teams that will be interesting to watch. 22 seed St. Aug heads to 11 seeded McKinley. St. Aug is a team that was really talking state championship potential this year and has a ton of talent. Played a tough schedule and had some games get away from them, including some close games. And so how the Purple Knights handle the postseason will be interesting. And Archbishop Rummel, an 18 seed, has to make a long trip up to Northwood Shreveport, where Coach Brown and company have done a nice job with the Falcons. But Rummel has had some weeks where they have shown on the field they can play with anybody in the state when they're playing their best. And so I won't make the drive up to Shreveport, but if it was closer, I might consider that one as my first playoff stop. But that's one that for casual fans in Shreveport should be on the radar, at least under consideration.
Man, looking at this bracket, I can't move on without talking about the job Coach Allen did at McKinley this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's his second year there at McKinley. They're in a very heavy district, 9-team district. You only get those 2 opportunities to play outside the district. And they play a streak of games early in the year against 3 teams with 8 wins. They played Plaquemine, Westphal, and Zachary 3 weeks in a row. And they dropped all 3 games. Plaquemine was by 2 scores. Westphal was only by 2 points. And then Zachary, obviously, is a little lopsided. When you're playing one of the standards of the state, that happens sometimes. But then they go and win 6 games in a row, most all in convincing fashion to end out the year. And earned an 11 seed in a home game for the McKinley Panthers. An incredible job by Coach Allen and his staff, and only their second year there. And, I coached against them last year, and I could see last year, like, McKinley's going to be pretty good. They're going to continue to put together some solid seasons they can be proud of. And he did that this year, 7-3 against that kind of schedule where you're playing against St. Michael, who's a top 10 seed. You're playing against Estruma, who we think is going to have some good years to come with Coach Sid Edwards. You play against a Zachary, you play against a defending semifinalist in Westphal, a district champion in Plaquemine. Like they didn't have an easy schedule. To go 7-3 against that load was pretty great. And especially at a place like McKinley that, winning at McKinley can go a long way to really impact those kids' lives.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, that's pretty much it, man. We've talked an awful lot to one another and to some fantastic guests from around the state, both coaches, players, and Hunter Bauer, who does such an awesome job with Go Preps, keeping, day to day, those power rankings updated with not just football, but in all sports. He has taken on a huge task to manage that website and does a really good job with it. We were joking before about fans getting frustrated when there's website traffic issues or whatever, but he's just trying to build it. He's only a couple of years into it. He was joking on Facebook about if you want to send him some money to kind of up some of the capabilities, he's happy to accept checks.
My favorite is when people get mad at him for power rankings, like it's his bracket.
Books, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's his poll or something.
Yeah.
I was like, guys, it's math. So that's why I love that. If you go to his website, you have Power Rankings 101 as a link you can click, and it explains to you how it works.
I've seen coaches on social media platforms in recent years who are referencing LHSAA fixing the brackets and giving some teams higher seeds.
Literal math, guys.
It's just a formula. But Hunter does a really good job managing all that on his end and also weathering some of the goofy complaints from elsewhere, from people who don't fully understand what's going on. But thanks to him and everyone who took some time to join us. We're certainly looking forward to the next few weeks. I'll be out all over the place these next few Fridays. I think you will ideally be with the Bears for not this Friday because of the bye, but all the way to the Dome if things are going right for you guys. I started to joke earlier that we were going to give people something to do other than the Saints, but they actually pull out a win. And so I'm sure some people are watching that and get a chance to replay this later, but appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely, man. It was a lot of fun. I hope to do it again.
Yep. Again, he's Chance Hester, Catholic High coach, Hudson Fuller, head coach. Chance is on that staff with Catholic High, came down with Hudson from West Feliciana, also runs the Louisiana Football Report. And so keep up with everything he's pumping out there on social media. Does a great job with a lot of graphics, info, games to watch, and so on. And for Louisiana versus all y'all, I'll have some more complete bracket predictions coming out during the course of this week, and excited to get back out there on Friday night or Thursday if there's a good matchup in the area and go see some Louisiana high school playoff football. Thanks y'all for joining us.